development funding, returning citizens and seniors focused employment, skills development services, the Poverty Commission, the First Source Program, and wage theft services, among many other topics that we may, ultimately have an opportunity to cover today. We want to ensure district residents are getting access to the programs and opportunities that will allow them to meet their needs for quality living. These are the primary reasons for today's hearing. Right. Okay, we're going to move right into hearing from our, I think we have one public witness that will join us today. And so we will hear that testimony, and then we will move to our government witnesses. Right. Okay. He is not able to be here. All right. Our public witness has not checked in, indicated some difficulty with being here at this precise hour. So we're going to move immediately to our government witnesses. If that individual shows up, we will put them on at the appropriate time. And so now we will hear from the testimony from the district's primarily workforce development and employment services agencies. And we're going to begin with the Workforce Investment Council. And I'll ask you to join us, Mr. Hubbard, the director of that important program. And I will just brief the community on why this agency is so important. The district's Workforce Investment Council, or WIC, is a private sector-led board responsible for advising the district government on the development, implementation, and continuous improvements of an integrated and effective workforce system. The WIC serves as both the state and local workforce investment board for the district, which are federally required to ensure that funds from the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act are spent appropriately. The agency is responsible for drafting the district's 4-year unified state plan for workforce development and plays an important role in the coordination of programs and services with other district agencies that utilize federal workforce funding. Further, the WIC also works more broadly to ensure that all the district's workforce investments, both federal and local, are part of a comprehensive and collective system and collaborative system that supports district residents and businesses. To that point, I would like to congratulate the WIC on the updated expenditure guide, which has more user-friendly layout and serves as an important role on ensuring that residents and providers can more easily evaluate different programs and opportunities. Additionally, the WIC engages in various local and federally funded programs and initiatives, including career pathways. So today, the WIC representatives will give the public the opportunity to learn about how the WIC is supporting our community and learning how they help improve our workforce system. We heard from a few public witnesses a few days ago. So now we'll turn to Mr. Hubbard. And good morning, Mr. Hubbard.
Good morning.
And I will swear you in if you raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm that your testimony and any statements that you make before us today to be truthful and complete?
I do.
All right. You may proceed with your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson Bonds. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning. To you, Chairperson Bonds, members of the committee and staff, I'm Drew Hubbard, and I serve as the Executive Director of the DC Workforce Investment Council. Thank you for the opportunity to share our progress and the strategic direction that we play in the DC workforce system. Over the past year and a half, since I began my tenure at the WIC, I've worked at restructuring the WIC staffing structure and operations to create a more efficient and effective agency. This restructuring has strengthened our internal capacity, streamlined operations, and reinforced our partnerships with the Department of Employment Services, the Department of Human Services, the Department of Disability Services, the University of District of Columbia, the Office of the State Superintendent, and the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Education, as well as the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, along with other key government agencies. This is allowing us to better align workforce policies with the needs of district residents and employers. One of the most significant accomplishments this year was the development, approval, and launch of the district's Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act state plan, which received final approval in January. This plan, which follows a federally mandated 4-year cycle, serves as the foundation for a cohesive and effective public workforce system and ensures that federal funds are effectively leveraged while allowing for local innovation and streamlined execution that aligns the efforts of multiple agencies and stakeholders. To complement the plan's implementation and ensure greater transparency and accountability, the WIC staff developed and received WIC board approval on a set of dashboard goals and measures that provides a front-facing real-time view of key workforce outcomes. These dashboard measures, along with our participation in the Education Through Employment data system, will allow policymakers, agency heads, and the public to track progress, improving our transparency efforts, and providing stakeholders with additional information to make informed decisions about the strategic direction of our workforce efforts. A key priority over the past year has been facilitating efforts to enhance greater collaboration between workforce system partners. In addition to biweekly leadership meetings with DOES and the Deputy Mayor of Education to align strategies, WIC staff have begun meeting biweekly with their DOES and DME counterparts to align performance outcomes and advance special initiatives. I've also expanded engagement beyond the WIC board, meeting with an expanded list of agency directors and workforce leaders from organizations such as Hire Local DC, Build Within, CityWorks DC, DC Builds DC, and Potomac Job Corps. By integrating voices from across the workforce system, we are reinforcing our efforts to create a unified one workforce system. This approach that prioritizes collaboration, efficiency, and service delivery. We've also made significant strides in revising and improving workforce policy and training provider access. Over the past year, we've undertaken a complete review and have begun to revise our local policies that govern our federal WIOA implementation requirements. Although we are currently in the process of revising multiple policies, our highest priority is revising policies that add more quality training offerings for district residents to choose from. To streamline the process for providers, this includes eliminating redundancies in the eligible training provider list application process and setting regular review timelines to provide increased certainty for prospective training providers. We've also implemented biweekly technical assistance calls to support new training providers in navigating the application process. These technical assistance sessions provide direct guidance to increase the quality, diversity, and accessibility of workforce training options. Additionally, we launched a new electronic application for training providers, ensuring the applications are complete and ready for review, significantly reducing processing delays. These policy revisions have also clarified the WIC's monitoring oversight responsibilities, strengthening the compliance and program effectiveness. Through these efficiencies, along with establishing reciprocity agreements with institutions of higher learning in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, we expect to see an increase in the number, quality, and diversity of training providers, ensuring that our workforce system offers programs that meet the evolving needs of employers and job seekers. In support of frontline workforce professionals, last year we hosted the DC Workforce Summit, which saw record attendance with over 200 professionals participating. This event provided essential training, policy updates, and best practices to improve workforce service delivery across the district. This year, our annual summit is scheduled for September 11th at the Kellogg Center at Gallaudet University. In addition, we have added a day for business engagement on the 12th at the same location, that is September 12th. Another major initiative this year was the redesign of the Workforce Development System Expenditure Guide, which you just referenced, Chair Bonds. Previously, the guide had been a dense, more than 15-page Excel document, which had been cluttered with data-heavy spreadsheets. Through this year's newly released guide, we created a streamlined, easier-to-read tool, providing clear insights into financial and performance data of workforce training providers. In conjunction with the expenditure guide, we focused on common measures and performance efficiencies, ensuring that the WIC's programs and initiatives align with both federal compliance and standards and local workforce priorities. This year also marked a significant milestone in our engagement with healthcare workforce needs. For the first time, we presented the Healthcare Occupations Report developed by the Healthcare Workforce Partnership in a public forum, inviting over 60 training providers, community-based organizations, district agencies, and residents to discuss the growing demand and opportunities for healthcare occupations. This initiative is a part of our commitment to data-driven, employer-driven workforce planning, ensuring that district residents are equipped with the skills necessary to fill high-demand, high-wage jobs. This partnership continues to serve as a model for other sector strategies within our high-demand industries. We also continue to strengthen our business engagement strategy, establishing deeper partnerships with the DC Department of Small and Local Business Development and local chambers of commerce. These collaborations are critical in expanding opportunities for promoting local hiring and ensuring that workforce training programs align with employer needs. By directly engaging business leaders, we are creating stronger connections between job seekers and meaningful employment opportunities. Additionally, we created a comprehensive toolkit for WIC board members, equipping them with the resources necessary to effectively, excuse me, engage stakeholders and communicate the value of workforce development initiatives. This toolkit not only enhances outreach, but also reinforces the rewards and impact of serving district residents through strategic workforce planning. And finally, looking ahead, one of the WIC's main priorities is to capture more accurate and complete outcome data to assist in developing a clear roadmap for education and employment linkages, ensuring a strong and sustainable pipeline for future workforce opportunities. As part of this effort, we will continue refining our workforce dashboards, which were presented to the WIC board in December. A full rollout of the dashboards is planned for the summer board meeting. It will provide a comprehensive data-driven look at workforce trends and performance outcomes. For real this time, finally. Last year, WIC staff gained national recognition by presenting at the National Workforce Development Conference on the My Journey DC platform, which is the district's one of the district's customer referral systems. This platform enhances service coordination, streamlines access to workforce resources, and improves the user experience for job seekers. By leveraging technology, in this instance and others, we are making it easier for residents to navigate the workforce system and connect with available resources. Through strategic restructuring, policy enhancements, and stronger partnerships, the WIC has become a more effective and visible leader in workforce development. With the leadership of Mayor Bowles' administration and the continued support from the council, we can build on these successes and ensure that the district workforce system remains strong, inclusive, and responsive to industry needs. Thank you for this opportunity to testify, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for this testimony. I must say, you have mentioned a number of areas of improvement and significant services to the community. You're to be applauded. Thank you very much. You're a small entity, agency, but sounds like you are mighty in what you're doing. And I think you still are limited with maybe 8 employees.
We have 10.
All
10.
right, 10. So it shows what we can do, our government, speaking to them and to the citizens with a limited number of individuals that are making things happen. Thank you very much for that.
I think to a person, and not just speaking for my team, but I know this cuts across the government, especially in this climate. We value public service and we take it seriously.
All right. Thank you for that. I wanted to just, in taking a look at your testimony, I wanted to ask a little bit about the cooperation that you're receiving from these entities. It's one thing to say that we are working with these groups. It's another to understand the strength of the relationships that you're building. And so when you talk about DOES, DHS, UDC, OSSI, um, the um, the deputy mayor for education, and even DIMPED. Um, what stands out among these relationships that can inform us that it's a tight knit group that is totally committed to working together to make sure that we have workforce opportunities and connections for those seeking employment to the jobs market and can be placed in these jobs. And I ask this question particularly given the current climate in which we operate. Thinking about the potential and certainly the likelihood that there are many who have a strong skill set, work experience that would seek jobs in the DC economy.
So of all those entities you mentioned, the majority of the core workforce partners, as you are aware, sit in the Deputy Mayor of Education's cluster, including ourselves, including DOES. Um, but we do have other agency partners that sit in other clusters, but it's uh, intentional that we have representation from the highest levels of IC, from DCPS, from Department of Human Services that actually sit as board members on the WIC. And, serving with them, it adds a ready wealth of perspective from the core work they do that we can apply to workforce initiatives. Specifically with DOES, I think I mentioned Dr. Morris Hughes and I have a standing directors meeting where we not only compare notes, talk about challenges, successes, what we need to look at doing jointly going forward. Um, and again, as I mentioned, that is now mirrored on the staff level so that, we are going into this lockstep, um, armed with the best information that we have when it comes to labor market information, what sectors we're looking to prioritize, what populations we're looking really to try to empower to get some of these opportunities. Uh, the intentionality also cuts across efforts such as when we developed the WIO estate plan, we worked in direct linkage with OSSI to have mirroring language in the Perkins Plan, which is the federal plan that dictates how we spend our CTE money. So there was guidance from the federal government for such an alignment. I think we're probably one of the first jurisdictions to make sure that those plans not only reference each other, but have some common language that we'll build on in the subsequent years as plans come up. So the 4-year cycle for the state plan, as you know, has an interim step. We'll be updating our state plan in, well, I guess it's now a year or a year and a half, to look at what we learned from this iteration of state plan, what tweaks and changes we want to make for the duration of the current state plan. And that's critical that we have the input of all of these voices. One of the exciting things I want to point out, we hosted a convening, I believe in December, and it was around some of the things around the expenditure guide, but it was a broader conversation about of the probably dozen plus agencies that have workforce programming. Um, let's get in the room and talk about what we're doing, talk about some of the common entities that we are tapping to do some of our activities. And it was a well-received and actually well-attended um, convening where we got a lot of work done and we got to do a lot of strategic planning about what we want to see the collective system do going forward. And these are disparate agencies from the core agencies we've already mentioned down to agencies you wouldn't think have workforce programming like the DC Housing Authority or some of the subspecialty agencies like the Office on Restraining Citizens Affairs. So we're trying to look at matching needs of populations and programming that's out there that may not be informed by the full weight of what we can bring to the table, what DOES can help bring as far as technical assistance and help the full system really get in alignment with how we deliver workforce programming.
I really appreciate you putting all of that on the record because I think more and more the work that we do as a government to focus on workforce opportunities and creating the systems that can guide us to results is very, very important. And so thank you very much for that. And I hope that you'll be celebrating involving some of the other agencies, bringing them under the fold of your cluster. I'm thinking of DOEE, for instance, that has an ongoing program. Have you been in touch with some of the other agencies or that seem to have an independent hiring process and training process?
We have, and it's appropriate you brought up DOEE. We have standing meetings with a range of agencies that do infrastructure work. We are hopeful that, the federal infrastructure money continues to be available for those agencies. And they've been very receptive to partnering with us on the workforce aspects as that federal funding is brought to bear for not only building and reinventing and updating our infrastructure, but making sure that our residents get a shot at the workforce opportunities that come with that.
And so in developing this cluster organization that works together, um, how can you inform us as to whether or not there is duplication in the system, or is that intentional so that we have more avenues, opportunities for um, workforce programming, or just how is it organized? And what I'm asking, for instance, if you have 10 different agencies that are involved in workforce, in your planning session, did you make some determination as to, let's say UDC is going to handle these three occupations, DOEE is going to handle those three, how are you organized?
So I think one of the great outcomes from the convening I talked about, we all agreed on next steps of creating. It might amount to an ad hoc committee, but a entity of these agencies that will meet regularly to talk through these issues. So that will be next steps, and I look forward to updating you once we kick that off. But we're going to be discussing issues just like you talked about. Kind of who plays in which spaces, and not only. Making one entity or another responsible for it, but really leveraging the different activities so that we can do more with the current set of resources that we have.
I think that would be very helpful to the individuals who are looking for employment, individuals who are looking for opportunities to advance, to move to a new, more exciting job avenue. And so I would just like to see us focus in such a way that you've got you have one set of information that is easily accessible by the public now. So now let's see if we can't help people navigate so they're not all over the so-called boardwalk trying to find same kind of job and what have you. And it also implies that we are so diverse that we are uh, one agency versus the other agency. When, as you said, the goal is that we're one workforce development, one workforce resource for the entire city.
I think another piece of that too, if you step outside of the formal public workforce system, um, we also have a number of nonprofits that work in this space. So it's bringing them to the table too. We have a community of practice model where we engage community-based organizations that do direct workforce service provision and client services around workforce to make sure that they are actually playing within the not the confines, but the complementary piece of the system, so that again, the resources that they're bringing from philanthropy from outside complement what the district government is doing, and we maximize our efforts. So there's a good set that already are engaged with us, and we're trying to bring more folks who do that direct service into the system too.
And so to that extent, do you see this cluster, this ad hoc committee, as you referenced, moving into the domain of reviewing or setting up a criteria that would help us learn those entities, those nonprofits that provide services, are you actually going to rate them, grade them based on some criteria? Um,
I would think kind of the beginning exercise, number one, is to make sure that we are all talking from the same sheet music. So one of the conversation points that we are really going to focus on is having some baseline set of common measures. What does a training program mean? That means different things in the context of some initiatives at different agencies. We want to make sure that we're clear about what we're offering, what we're tracking, what outcomes that folks need to come back and show related to the efficiency and efficacy of their programs. So again, that residents have the ability to make informed decisions about what programs they want. So it's creating those baselines first, and I think with that too, again, we have to have all of our workforce training activities be industry informed. So that's another big push too, that we can help with doing more business engagement and outreach. And then I get getting back to your original question, it is important that these nonprofits and CBOs who might provide some of the job readiness, some of the soft skills training, have a part in this ecosystem too.
well, thank you. That's a nice, discreet way of making sure that we're presenting to our public quality,
Mhm.
and that we get results. And I guess I'm stuck back last year with the numbers indicating that we'd had more than 5,000 go through the training programs, but we ended up with about 300 that actually were placed in jobs. And it just seems to me the cost for the 5,000 in training, and of course, that's just nominal, really, when you think about the training program that maybe was designed to work with 60 and ended up with 30 applicants. I'm just very concerned that not only do we celebrate what's is good and new about our approach to workforce development, that we also look back and make sure that we are improving overall and that our product is solid, because our resources are not as they once were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They are a little on the, well, they're just barely keeping up with inflation. And that means that we do not have the resources that we once had. But at the same time, our population may have a greater need. And when we get to the budget cycle, I just want to make sure that nothing leaves this committee. In other words, we hold on to our dollars. So I just want to make sure.
So, and I think this was welcomed again with the agencies that we've been continually engaged with. Another kind of hole we've identified, not all the programs actually track all the full outcomes or have built-in employment placement support. So it's again, it may not, part of it may be that we're not just telling the full picture or we don't have the data. So on the front end, we want to make sure that folks structure their programs, agencies structure their programs so that it tells the actual story of what's happening with those dollars.
Thank you. That's great. So you're putting in place a tracking system, or that's one of your goals with your next steps.
Yes.
We welcome that. Now, does this have anything to do with last year we approved this budget for this database through the Deputy Mayor for Education Office. Is
Mhm.
is
The-
that the device, the system you're going to use?
It's part of it. So that initiative that you referenced is more about having a place where we can engage researchers to help us look at different discrete parts of the system, employment through education through employment. So uh, I know we sit on the task force and several other agencies that we've already mentioned for an effort to really have a more powerful way to really leverage outside researchers to help us really parse out some of these initiatives and how efficient they are, what directions we should be taking, et cetera, using our data.
Everyone across this big globe loves our data. Okay, I'm very much aware of that. We are the test ground for so much. I guess I'm concerned that whatever we're using and spending money on now, that it benefit the people who live here
Yes.
and who need work. So while I guess I should be impressed that you're talking science, I guess I'm more where the rubber hits the road now. Okay.
I'm like you. I'm a political scientist, so I I like the science that helps people. Um, but
So
I
this
make that
this
joke.
does
But
not get it. This does not get where people in community are, as you well know. They don't want to hear about the data tracking. They want to hear about put me on a job, first give me the skill set,
mhm.
maybe a credential, put me in the job so I can start earning and taking care of
But
myself and
it
my
does,
household.
in all seriousness, it does go back to helping us with being data driven so that we use these dollars more efficiently. So it is kind of the back end piece that's going to help us impact residents going forward.
All right, so you're informing me perhaps that of the 5,000 that are that participate in a training program, instead of an outcome of 350 matched to a job, we will have 1,000 matched to a job or 2,000 by using this data tracking system.
Not directly, but it's going to help us with program design and really tracking what current programs do, linkages between what happens at DCPS through OSSI, through DOS to policies we maybe put in place to make them more beneficial to rubber meets the road, actual day-to-day programming.
All right. And this system, will it have any space for best practices, learning what, let's say, OSSI does versus what UDC does, and learning that UDC is getting greater percentage because they use certain systems better than OSSI. I'm just trying to understand the real value of this. I mean, I know we collect a lot of data, seriously, I know that, but I want to know how it really is benefiting our community.
Gotcha. Why don't we, if I can volunteer to do this, get more of the discrete direction that we've laid down moving forward on how it's going to operate and report back to you with something more formal.
All right, so we'll hear from you in 3 weeks.
That's fine.
That would be great. Emily's making notes. She does more than 100 words a minute or something. I do 23, so don't depend on me to get you there. Well, thank you for that. The new electronic application for training providers. Tell us a little bit about that.
So process wise, training providers that seek to get onto the ETPL have to apply through the WIC. Well, they need to be licensed through the HELC first, and then apply through the WIC, and then ultimately um, are going to go after a contracting vehicle with the Department of Employment Services to actually receive payment to train our residents. But, one of the real points of emphasis this year was to make sure that process worked as efficiently as possible. So we've spent a lot of time talking to our counterparts at HELC, which sits within OSSI, to look at how their licensing piece works, and then what that, it's not quite a handoff, but when that process is complete, when a provider would come to us uh, for application to appear on the ETPL, which is a function of an approval of the WIC and one of its discrete boards, the EWA committee. But what we were seeing was that we needed to, on our end, for efficiency's sake, create an electronic system where they could just input their documents directly to us. We would have checkoffs, so it's not any question about what's missing. Just like any other system where we're making sure that those applications are complete, so that there's no slowdown with the back and forth about you're missing this piece or otherwise. So we can put a complete package in front of the board members who are charged with reviewing these to get them done quickly.
Can you also, um, can you also explain what this means when you say that the agreements with institutions of higher education in Maryland, DC, and Virginia are expected to increase the number of the quality and diversity of training providers?
It's something that Dr. Morris Hughes and I have been talking about, um, really getting after. So as we look at training providers, call them native to the district, that including UDC. There are other entities, including the community colleges in Montgomery County and in Northern Virginia, that have established programs that could benefit our residents by establishing reciprocity. And it's one of the things that the Department of Labor encourages, especially in a regional sense, that, again, part of the bedrocks of our federally funded and supported system is customer choice. So this would be an area where DC residents would have a close-in entity of higher learning that they could go and get offerings that we may not have in the district proper right now.
All right, and so that means we would spread out offerings maybe in Maryland, maybe in Virginia.
Mhm.
All right, because we know so many Marylanders and Virginians work in the district as well. So
But
that's,
this would be, and I know you're focused on this, would be for our residents to take advantage of these training opportunities.
yes, yes, yeah. Putting us in the mix.
Mhm.
Okay. You mentioned that one of the WIC's main priorities is capturing accurate and complete outreach data to assist in your development of a clearer roadmap for education. So are you thinking from, let's say, I guess, through from the educational system that we have in the city to employment? Is this the focus, or are you thinking more broadly, like what happens to a young person as they move from childhood to adulthood and become let's say, a taxpayer in the district?
Excuse me. I think in that mention, I'm more focused on kind of the traditional workforce activities. Um, Again, it's kind of piggybacks on our discussion a few minutes ago about the variety of different agencies that have workforce activities. Um, Again, making sure that we are tracking similar outcomes or outcomes in a common way. That there are built-in uh, not feedback loops, but informative loops from industry that help them when they're looking to develop or strengthen their programs And again, on that back end, that these programs, and especially in some of the agencies that are not, uh, don't have workforce as a core function, that again, that they're structuring their programs, that they have employment and employment placement as a function of their programs too.
All right. Well, I was wondering if, let's say one of our specialty schools or schools with some of the specialty programs, um, like, I believe Dunbar has, an emphasis on finance as an example. I'm wondering if there is a program that would understand that you have young people who are in this arena, and they in turn would be encouraged to look at some of the, um, I guess, the entities that could provide them with additional training, maybe a certificate, and then those individuals would have an opportunity to be placed in internships or apprenticeships with our, in our business community.
Yeah, and I'm sure my colleagues at DOES will touch on this. I think they do that well. I mean, they work, again, talking about how we are structured, they work directly with DCPS, with OSSI to look at pipelining our young people into, the next part of their workforce and training journey.
Okay, so when you, back to your, clustered, ad hoc, is that how committee, and is that how you're thinking that we're gonna take our population through the whole
Sure,
system
and
of the opportunity? Is
look at
that it?
pathways, yes.
Okay, okay, so it's, that's what I was trying to
Mhm.
understand. Thank you very much. Regarding the Department of Labor, Employment and Training Administration's monitoring of the WIC during FY 24 and the first quarter of 25, you mentioned working to streamline the processes. Can you tell us, is there some mandate that we have received from the Department, U.S. Department of Labor, that we must fulfill?
So it's in course of the regular monitoring of the system, and they, uh, as their function, provide us with technical assistance to make sure that the initiatives, policies, and other things we have in place meet our federal requirements. So one of the main things, like I mentioned, we are reviewing the local policies right now to make sure that they're uh, policies that may be out of date with current federal law are taken off the books and replaced, that we work with them and their technical assistance to look at strengthening current policies to maximize opportunities. It's along those lines and really receiving the technical assistance to make sure that our main function, which is kind of making sure those policies in place are going forward.
So, given the current administration's approach to employment, do you foresee there being some, maybe the department, U.S. Department is changing its approach to what happens in the states?
I don't want to guess and try to look in a crystal
Okay.
ball. All I can say is, we have been engaged with our labor partners as we have in the past, and they've continued to provide valuable technical assistance to us.
Okay. Now that the WIC has taken over the sole responsibility for the development of the state plan, do you intend to make it more accessible to the public? And if so, how?
Yes, we struggled with this and are trying to be as modern as possible, because I think one of our first thoughts was we're going to print glossy, versions of this 400-page document and have them everywhere. And then we thought better of that. So we have engaged, I believe, a CBE to help us look at creating a electronic version that'll be accessible. And if it's not on our website, it will be. I think it's already on the website in final form where folks can look at it. And that's DC Works, our website.
Okay. Is there the possibility, the potential for maybe an abbreviation of maybe 10 or 12 pages?
Sure, there's an
That
executive
could,
executive
okay,
summary. Yeah.
the executive summary So that could be widely
Yeah.
distributed.
And as I mentioned before, we're going to be quickly back into this
Okay.
2-year update. So there'll be an opportunity for the public to
Okay.
provide input again. We'll be doing public forums to solicit input also.
All right. It just strikes me that making sure that members of the Chamber of Commerce should have a copy. And the various, anyone who becomes a contractor should have a copy. DC contractors, it just seems that a number of these trades groups should have a copy because this is a good way for them to understand where we need to go and how we might get there with their help if they could join and create an apprenticeship or internship for our people.
And in addition to that, my staff is ready and continues to be accessible. We don't want to just point folks to this large document and say, good luck. We will help walk folks through discrete sections of it that they're interested in. And we have those standing open hours to help folks with a range of things, including kind of navigating how to become a training provider through the TPL process and other policy kind of driven areas that we can help explain.
All right, well, thank you for that. In response to a question about lapsed federal funds, you discussed how the delay in receiving funding impacted the procurement process and limited the ability to allocate funds. Um, how could this process addressing these issues be improved?
We already have, and it's something I discussed with Dr. Morris Hughes coming into this current year to make sure that we get, and it was more on us and me coming in newer to the role, making sure that the MOU that governs the transfer of these funds happens earlier. This year it happened much earlier than last year, so we should not run into that problem again.
Okay. You mentioned streamlining the ETPL process. Will this include the process for human care agreements?
Yep, and it's something that I'm proud that we've had a lot of good, not just meetings and dialogue, but actually changes and working directly with the OES and Director Morris Hughes. One thing that we agreed on was formalizing and regularizing the frequency where human care agreements are offered in this area. So they're now on a quarterly basis. So that again, as folks come through both the health process, application to us, and then finally application to get a human care agreement, they know there's a regular cycle when they can undertake these activities.
All right. As it relates to job pathways, you mentioned the recent publication of the fourth annual Healthcare Occupations Report that identified high demand occupations, workforce shortages, and emerging trends. Can you just put on the record some of the highlights of this important report?
Sure. I don't want to misspeak, so let me find them in my notes. While I'm looking, I'll say this: the healthcare group, as I mentioned before, um, is kind of the epitome of what a sector strategy should look like. It is heavily industry driven. You have, across the board, the different types of healthcare entities, from the hospitals to the urgent care centers to the centers for aging. And they've spent literally years um, taking not just kind of a notion of what a healthcare job is, but what it actually is and what it means for the different types of entities. And I think another piece that we were able to take from that too, besides just what you would think of as the normal healthcare jobs, nursing, data entry is a medical entry is a big piece. But then there's also another subset of jobs, including accounting, including building maintenance, that is also needed to make sure these entities actually work. So in looking at purely the healthcare jobs, I think one of the best outcomes is the true career paths that show, where some of these more entry level jobs can lead to with the proper training and certification, as informed by not only our regulations, as promulgated by DC Health, but as executed and as needed by these healthcare entities, including the hospitals and the other entities I spoke about. And they, as the actual employers and what the opportunities are, invaluable to knowing where these pockets are and opportunities are, and how the corresponding training should be tracked and really built to serve our residents to get them into these opportunities.
All right, and so have you all given, through your ad hoc group, given thought to how you would take the diversity of jobs in this arena, because
Mhm.
that's what it really is, and identify the human care agreement that would be needed in order to do the training and therefore set up the training and get people into the jobs. You see, I'm still focused on how do we get people into matching to the jobs.
Sure. So I'll use this as an example. Again, an agency that may not have workforce as their primary focus seeks to train folks in IT, a broad kind of category. And we can't just teach folks CompTIA and think that we've trained them to be an IT professional. We have to be in these and engage with these companies that are actually doing the work, to tell us what they actually need, and what people actually need to be certified in. So we can't just guess and assume that we're training people to be ready, without the engagement of the business community and the various sectors, um, not just ones and twos, but a broad cross section of folks in these sectors. That's why it's sector-based strategies, tend to have the best outcomes, because we're getting a broad voice of sector folks that really inform how we approach this work in that particular area.
Okay, so that means like medical coding, that would be is an IT area and you would work. Okay. I'm trying to envision it and trying to envision it for those who might be curious and are listening and want to partake of a particular career or have a particular interest, and how can they get involved at this level.
Yep. And some of the other lessons learned, there's some basic foundational skills that cut across sectors, right? So we want to make sure that that's a starting point, and then we build on that to what the individual industries and sectors need in their workforce, in their human capital.
So has your ad hoc group decided yet on what are the basic skills? I mean, I know that over the years we've talked about, the soft skills. What does that really mean?
Not so much the group, but I think we, again, who do this, as our core function, um, have a kind of a longstanding criteria of what um, general soft skills are needed for job readiness. But even with that, again, looking at the input of business, that's another area of business engagement. What does job readiness mean in your particular sector? What does an entry level worker need to achieve to actually work in your sector? So we're getting not just the general definition of someone being job ready, but we're drilling down to what that means in the different sectors also.
Sounds exciting. I won't I won't belabor the point
No, but I
that you're
think it's
making.
important, and I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, when we talk to not only the business groups but the individual businesses, and I start with our board chair who owns an IT business. They have specific criteria they're looking for successful candidates. for their job opportunities. A job-ready person, like I said, has some transferable skills that cut across, but it means different things to different employers.
Okay, so what are 5 of the new sectors that we have identified? I guess is the best way to ask.
Of the new,
Yes. I mean, I know that we do flagging with construction.
ah,
Okay. I'm okay. I know we have nurses, general IT. So I'm asking, how are we diversifying these big areas of skills building to the specifics that you just mentioned, into a sector like the healthcare sector, as we were discussing earlier, or even the construction sector, um, um, finance sector. Um, we do a lot of those things in
so
the
we have
District of Columbia.
areas like eds and meds. We have
We do a
business
lot of those.
administration, construction, just because of the nature of how the district is with, we seems like we reinvent parts of the city constantly, right? So we have a lot of construction activity. I think that goes back to one of your earlier questions about apprenticeship. A lot of our apprenticeship activity and traditionally apprenticeship, has been in the construction field. We are blessed, that we have policy in the books that really strengthens our apprenticeship focus. We're one of the few jurisdictions that has a mandatory apprenticeship usage law. So you get those opportunities where district residents are mandated to be hired as apprentices on district funded jobs. We're in the process of really matching, those expanding and strong sectors, and as I mentioned before, making sure that we have the programming that we're pipelining folks to get trained to participate in those areas.
Starting at high school
Starting
or
earlier,
within our maybe middle school.
and I'm sure Dr. Morris Hughes will tell you about the great things they're doing with the job exposure at the middle school level. So we're trying to expose young people as early as possible.
All right. I guess I'm looking for some definitive information that would inform us that we have, let's say, 2,000 high schoolers that are interested in health services or working within that confine, as you call it. And we therefore are working with those in the employment sector that have these jobs.
Mhm.
And so I'm student number 623, and I am interested in medical coding. So you're going to help me move to where medical coding is needed because there's a job there.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure my colleagues would tell you that they can engage with the Office of Youth Programming and get into those pipelines um, to get into the paths they need to pursue that. Both on and as we have programming both on the educational side with our infrastructure. I'm sorry, our targeted school and opportunities kind of on the education side that link with our workforce activities.
All right. And as I think about the WIC, which is this umbrella, and you have these many entities that are helping to develop jobs, maybe in the private sector, and those in our government that are focused on some of the different sector needs. I'm trying to understand how the umbrella coordinates that or the umbrella tracks that because you're more of a tracking entity than anything else,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, you told me you're a tracker. That's what you
the
do.
doers are sitting over there
Yeah,
to my
you're the
left. So
tracker. Okay, so you're the tracker. Okay. So how do you track that, and how does it come together?
how's it come together? I mean, it's these convenings, it's the workforce summit, it's the sharing of information kind of across different government clusters, whereas, we are able to share what's going on and what we can offer as far as assistance, from our perspective to help them structure their programs. It's making sure that again, some of the other agencies that are not core or have workforce at their core know what's going on in the rest of the system so that they're not duplicating efforts or thinking that they have to go it alone, or they can look at and model some of their things from successful programs. So it's the engagement piece. It's convening. We are a convener of both some of the government entities and some of the, nonprofit and CBO partners to really make sure that we're all at the table talking through these issues and making the kind of best policy and tracking how outcomes reflect, those things we put in place.
All right, you mentioned that while attending the business summit hosted by the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals, that you learned about strategies for improving job placement outcomes. Can you share one or two of those strategies that are frequently used?
Sure. I think, one of the things I always point to, and I think this was part of that business summit, and it's standard practice that folks around the country look at is looking at kind of both sides of the equation, right? So we have a primary responsibility to our residents and their employment journey, but then we also have the business community as an important stakeholder too. So it's going to sound redundant, but part of it is making sure you get that input from the business community to be a valuable input into the programming that we do on behalf of our residents. That's one piece. I think another also that we look at is also as we look to match residents to opportunities, we take into account um, the whole person. So one of the activities that the WIC had engaged in years past was talking to businesses about skills-based hiring. It's a concept that folks around the country are looking at, but besides just the credential or the training they may have uh, other life experience or other work experience that we need to help them bring to the forefront to present themselves as the best candidate for these companies, so that they're not limited, or that the companies don't limit themselves or limit their pool of potential employees, how they write job descriptions, how they write job postings that may make them miss out on good candidates that are DC residents.
Thank you for that. This just changing a little bit. In the interest of getting more district residents on pathways to growing careers such as cybersecurity, software development as examples, should the district consider adding digital literacy courses to the list of graduation requirements?
Did they add that already? I mean, I know the graduation requirements were just updated. I will say, and I'll speak from something that I know that financial literacy and other surrounding kind of actual skills pieces are one of the requirements around our youth employment opportunities. So there's a expansive list of a lot of uh, valuable resources that go into our youth employment activities.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. You mentioned in your responses that the apprenticeship program has seen significant growth this year with 64 new apprenticeships providers and 874 residents actively participating. How can we incentivize apprenticeship providers to guarantee job placement to the participants who complete their training?
So, and I think as we've again noted in our answers, and you already know this, the apprenticeship functions are a function of the Department of Employment Services. It's an important function. I think our apprenticeship office is probably one of the best in the country. Um, where we come into is also ensuring that, you know, registered apprenticeship sponsors are able to appear on the eligible training provider list. We want to make sure that they know they have the ability to place their programs on the list if they opt to. Um, one of the, and it's more of a just a function that happens, if we have companies or businesses that we interact with who know they want to do something, but, don't know how to engage with the system, we will point them to the apprenticeship office and say, see if what you do in your business is apprenticeable. We will point them to the resources of how they can establish an apprenticeship program, through the auspices of DOES. I love apprenticeship. I love earn while you learn models. I think it's one of the best approaches to having residents get money in their pocket while they get trained. So apprenticeship along with OJT, along with internship opportunities are something I wholeheartedly believe in, and I think we should always promote our businesses to participate in.
So you're sharing that participation in an apprenticeship program does not guarantee a job.
No, no, no. Apprenticeships, registered apprenticeship, you are an employee of that program once you bring that apprentice home.
You are an employee
Of
of
that
that
company. I'm
of
sorry.
that company.
Hmm.
All right. So once you have gone through 3 to 5 years, you're an employee while you're going through the program.
Absolutely.
And when you conclude, after 5 years, let's say, or 3 years, you remain an employee of that company.
All things considered, if there's no other intervening circumstances, yes. And I think the other thing worth mentioning about apprenticeship, you know, the companies and entities that run registered apprenticeship, they are putting skin in the game because they are actually, bringing these folks along as employees. So it's incumbent upon them, and it's incumbent upon their bottom line really to make sure as many of the folks that start their apprenticeship programs finish them because they're putting resources into it for their training.
Okay, so the DC government no longer pays the salary for the first year. That was another program.
You're
Yeah,
thinking of,
mixing them
yep.
together. Gotcha. We no longer do that. Am I correct?
Not an apprenticeship. There's other programs where we do salary support, like on the job training.
What program do we pay on the
This is
job?
OJT. There's work experience in project empowerment, if I'm not mistaken, right? So there's several programs at DOES that
Okay,
do income support for the first portion of employment.
okay, so DOES will chat with
Mhm.
us about those. Okay, thank you. Your responses discuss Career Up DC, which offered 371 students an opportunity to earn a stipend while participating in a work-based learning activity. Can you reiterate how this opportunity is very meaningful?
You remember which question that was?
Let's see, I don't have it here.
Yep,
Career Up DC.
I'll have to get back to you on that one. I gotta look at that
Okay.
a little closer. Uh,
We're actually looking now. 76.
Okay, let's see what we said. I'm curious
Page
myself.
48.
I got you. I think this is the money that we gave or granted to OSSI to execute this program. If I'm mistaken, I think
It's, it seems to be an extensive program.
and
It
it's
starts,
executed by OSSI, by the State Superintendent for Education, and it's something we funded.
yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe they have a direct appropriation in the
Yes, it
current year to
says a
do this.
federally negotiated target,
Mhm.
so meaning, I guess, appropriation.
Yep.
Um, okay. So that's the only thing you want to say about this?
No,
Because it says this initiative provides students who are nearing the completion of their secondary education and entry level or industry recognized credential
Mhm.
or incentive while participating in a work-based learning activity. And it indicates that 9 of the 11 AFEIE and T providers provided 371 students an opportunity to participate in the work-based learning this year. Says it exceeded the goal
Yep.
to successfully engage at least, the goal was 150 students, but clearly exceeded that. And I guess our question is, why was this program so successful? Is it successful because the students were paid? And does this lead us to think about work study programs within our school system?
Yep. And I'm sorry that you had to read into the record because
That's
I was
okay.
a page behind.
I know, that's okay.
But I mean, I think this is illustrative of kind of what I've talked about. I see knows the population of young people that they're dealing with, um, as previously as a funding source, and having gone through the deliberate steps to make sure that their program is structured in such a way that it is, you know, linked to opportunities. It does have input from not just educational sources, but business sources. They have opportunities for internships. You know, it's a well thought through program is what I'm saying. And, you know, as you see by some of the outcomes.
And I appreciate that, your understanding about how it's well thought out. I would imagine every agency that has a standalone resource from federal funds to disperse, or even local funds, are doing, great work. Okay. I guess from my perspective and thinking about the budget process, which the council is responsible for ultimately, I just wonder if all of this diversity, this spread out all over the process, is really helpful. We have a Department of Employment Services. What does it really stand for? We have OSSI. We have this, all these other agencies. I am trying to understand why we don't have a common link hook where all of this is at least initiated from, and then you can sprinkle all over. But it just seems like it's a mammoth task to, in your words, to be the Workforce Investment Council. and to engage the private sector and not have all of this under the umbrella. Because in theory, OSSI has its own way. OSSI has many things that it does. In my opinion, I've told them this, too many things that it does for one entity. Because I was here when we started the state um, okay, education agency. So that concerns me that we are so many and big entities. So how does a parent, how does a student know where to go? Or do you just, you call up and you call up an agency? If they say yes, then you say, okay, I'm going to work, I'm going to have an opportunity for an internship there. If you're an adult, same thing. How do you, I mean, how does this umbrella see being able to help a citizen, as you say, match their interests and hopefully their skill set that they can be trained to use to a real job where they can be successful. It's one thing to get a job, but if you don't have the job after 6 months, we really have perhaps misinformed you about your opportunity. So I'm just trying to understand that.
So I'll say this. I'm actually encouraged, you know, by the level of participation and the enthusiasm from the range of agencies that do this type of work. I think one of the other pieces around this too is just that, you know, we have as a happy kind of byproduct of some of these convenings, that folks actually know each other across agency now. So you get less cold handoffs. So if someone presents at the Department of Disability Services and they really need to be at a different agency, let me get you to the right person. So that's a part of it too, and formalizing that also.
All right. Is there anything that we haven't touched on today that you would like to add to the record before we talk about your budget in a few weeks?
Uh, just we'll close with saying, I think it's important, and I think Mayor Bowser has really initiated this in a lot of areas. We need to be very deliberate and say who we are trying to help. Um, the populations that we have specific programming for, and making sure people know about our resources, because I think that's part of it too. One of our goals is to make sure that more residents know about the resources that are out there that are already apparent in the system.
So would you just repeat the populations we're trying to help?
So we've talked about prioritizing populations in some of our underserved neighborhoods. We've looked at Black women as a priority group. We've looked at returning citizens. We want to always look at empowering young people in their employment opportunities. But we want to just make sure that again, as we look at what's out there, that we know there's specific programming and we can point our residents where they need to go to take advantage of those opportunities.
All right, well, want to thank you very much for joining us today and sharing with us thoughts about and information, data as it relates to the Workforce Investment Council. Thank you, Mr. Hubbard.
Thanks for
very
having me.
much. And you're off the hot seat. Oh my goodness. Okay. Next, we will hear from the Department of Employment Services. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then come right back. So thank you. We have reconvened. Next, you will hear from the Department of Employment Services. Before we start, I just want to point out some areas of great interest to the public. The department is this committee's largest agency with 898 FTEs and a budget of 197 million in FY25. It is the lead labor and workforce development agency for the district, with a vast array of programs and services available to both current employees and to job seekers. Through its Office of Youth Programs and Division of State Initiatives, the agency offers training programs and services to ensure that young district residents have the skills and qualifications to gain meaningful, stable, and well-paying employment. This includes the youth programs such as Summer Youth Employment Program, the Career Ready Early Scholars Program, the School Year Internship Program, as well as adult programs such as Project Empowerment and the DC Infrastructure Academy. Through its Labor Standards Division, DOES ensures that the administration of 4 comprehensive programs that serve workers in their place of employment. The division enforces the district labor laws such as minimum wage and administers the district's workers' compensation program to provide benefits to non-government employees with employment-related injuries or illnesses. And DOES also administers the district's unemployment insurance and universal paid and medical leave programs through its Economic Stability and Benefits Bureau, providing income support to unemployed or underemployed district residents. And today we're going to hear from the agency about the progress made in FY24 towards reaching their performance measures. My hope is that we can use this hearing to highlight the successes of the agency, and we may also find ways to improve its ability to deliver positive results for district residents. And so with that said, we will now swear in our panel of government experts from the wonderful agency, Department of Employment Services, that everyone is focused on now across the nation. Okay, so if you would raise your right hand. All right, and we will swear you in. As you affirm your testimony and any statements that you make before us today, do you confirm that they will be truthful and complete?
I do.
I do.
All right, thank you so much. And you can begin, Dr. Morris Hughes, when you're ready.
Well, good morning, Chairperson Bonds and council members and staff of the Committee on the Executive Administration and Labor. My name is Dr. Unique Morris Hughes, the Director of the DC Department of Employment Services, and thank you for the opportunity to testify on DOES's performance in fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25 to date. Now, I will be reading an abbreviated version of my testimony, but you have the full version submitted for the record. Under the leadership of Mayor Muriel Bowser, the Department of Employment Services continues to support and advance district residents and workers as we champion equitable workforce development and invest in economic security. As the lead labor and workforce development agency in the district, we provide comprehensive employment services to ensure a competitive, full employment, lifelong learning, economic stability, and the highest quality of life for all district residents. As in previous years, our focus remains centered on consistently meeting our customer needs and delivering services at the highest standard. DOES has been entrusted with many important resources, and we know that the way we deliver our social insurance programs can have a major immediate impact on people. Our agency administers 3 major benefit programs to support you if you lost your job through no fault of your own, if you or your family are sick, if you are injured at work, or if you are bonding with a new addition to your family. In FY '24, the Unemployment Compensation Insurance Program adjudicated over 22,000 claims and paid over $105 million in benefits. The Paid Family Leave Program, which will turn 5 this year, adjudicated over 20,000 claims and paid over $130 million in benefits. And our Workers' Compensation Program has processed 8,000 worker compensation claims and adjudicated over 700 formal hearings for private sector employees injured out of and in, of course, employment. As economic first responders, DOES is prepared for the large influx of unemployment insurance claims we expect to receive as a result of recent federal actions with the new modernized unemployment insurance benefit systems, the use of ID.me to prevent fraud, and a battle-tested staff. In addition, DOES provides job seekers with several employment resources through its American Job Centers. DOES has 3 American Job Centers located throughout the district, providing career counseling, career planning, resume assistance, direct job placement, classroom and on-the-job training, information about local and national labor markets, unemployment compensation, and much more information. We'd like to encourage anyone who's been impacted by the recent federal layoffs to visit fedsupport.dc.gov. The Department of Employment Services administers and enforces the District of Columbia labor laws, which includes managing compliance with the First Source Act, which celebrated its 40th anniversary last year, investigating wage and hour complaints, providing resources to domestic workers, and evaluating employee safety and health in the workplace. In FY '24, the Office of Wage and Hour closely with the Office of Attorney General worked with the Office of Attorney General to secure a record-breaking $3.75 million settlement from a major construction company and their subcontractors that were involved in a worker misclassification scheme of payroll fraud and tax avoidance. The Office of Wage and Hour also worked with OAG to secure a $186,000 settlement for tip workers of a hospitality company. DOES administers high-quality training opportunities for in-demand local jobs. We move the district forward by putting our workers and residents first and by providing solutions that are custom-tailored to our communities. Our Division of State Initiatives provides vital on-ramps to employment for district residents with barriers to employment, including returning citizens. In fiscal year '24, we partnered with DC Water to launch Lead-Free DC Community Activators Program to support DC Water's initiatives to replace all lead service lines. Through this program, community activators receive on-the-job training that equips them with knowledge, skills, and experience necessary for community engagement. Community activators use the training to inform residents and property owners about replacing lead service lines, which help DC Water expand their outreach and education efforts significantly while also developing a strong and dedicated workforce for the district. The Community Activators Program has helped DC Water reach an 80% customer participation rate in the program, which is unlike any other participation rate in lead replacement programs in the country. DOES is helping to drive connections between the district's education and employment systems. We know that early work experience can be incredibly formative for our young people as they help to make connections with employers, build soft skills, and help youth develop an understanding that they can succeed in the workplace. Throughout fiscal year '24, we created numerous opportunities for positive youth development by offering diverse access points to career pathways, occupational skills training, and work experience. Last month, our Office of Youth Programs launched the FY '25 application for the Marion S. Berry Summer Youth Employment Program, receiving over 4,000 applications in just the first 48 hours and over 10,000 applications to date. In fiscal year '24, MBSYEP celebrated its 45th anniversary and awarded over $2 million in scholarships. Our newest youth program, Career Ready Early Scholars, serves students between the ages of 9 and 13 who reside in the district to engage in comprehensive career exploration. In fiscal year 24, the program served 358 students, of which 53.3% of participants lived in Ward 7 and 8. For FY 25, we received over 1,500 applications in just the first 48 hours and almost 3 applications by the closing date of February 2nd, 2025. Press will add a spring cohort in FY 25 to serve 80 students during spring break and a summer cohort that will look to serve 545 students. In FY 24, the Youth Apprenticeship Program focused on expanding program host sites to ensure broader access for district students across both public and charter schools, high schools. This effort resulted in the program achieving its highest number of host sites to date, ensuring a wider reach for apprenticeship opportunities. Additionally, DOES successfully introduced non-traditional apprenticeship pathways, including a healthcare-focused youth apprenticeship through Howard University, an IT-focused apprenticeship hosted at Dunbar Senior High School, and a program through DC Water. Also, through the Workforce Innovation Consortium, DOES has funded 150 slots for out-of-school youth to participate in youth apprenticeship programs in technology and traditional skilled trades. To date, 45 young people have been trained, with the remaining participants scheduled to be trained by the end of the program year. Finally, to continue the evolving needs of district residents and businesses, DOES continues to implement innovative strategic programs through our newest workforce initiative, Career Launchpad. Career Launchpad is designed to connect residents to high-impact careers through the following programs. In its first year, the Pathway to Public Service program placed 25 students from local universities, Howard and UDC, and year-long apprenticeships within district government agencies and DC Water. This immersive experience combined full-time employment with on-the-job training, mentorship, and ongoing professional development. Participants are gaining invaluable hands-on experience while receiving a competitive salary, a benefits package, and paid time off. We have already received applications for the next cohort of public service apprentices and look forward to the program's continued growth in FY 25. Under Mayor Bowser's leadership, DOES launched the DC Alliance for Healthcare Careers to create economic opportunities for DC residents through accessible pathways to family-sustaining careers while filling crucial healthcare roles with a sustainable pipeline of trained and credentialed workers for current and new healthcare facilities. Through the DC Alliance for Healthcare Careers, DOES has developed a pipeline using innovative public and private partnerships between government, local businesses, and local universities and training providers to recruit, train, and support DC residents to be hired in these family-sustaining wages and improving resident services. These partnerships include George Washington University Health Network and Hospital, Howard University Hospital, MedStar Washington Hospital Center, and Trinity University. We're also actively working on a partnership with the Psychiatric Institute of Washington. By integrating hands-on experience, mentorship, and industry-driven training, these programs prepare emerging talent to launch meaningful careers in healthcare, government, civic leadership, IT, and beyond. In conclusion, in this past year, DOES has continued to build on our strong foundation to continue moving the skilled, valuable, and determined workforce of the District of Columbia forward. I'd like to take a moment to thank DOES staff for their crucial work that they do every day. I am privileged to lead the staff that is truly committed to connecting all district residents to life skills and employment opportunities DC residents need on their pathway to the middle class. I look forward to working with you and the council and to continuing our valuable partnership and district businesses, educators, workers, and residents, including our youth, to drive workforce development and economic progress. This concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to address any questions that you have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I must share that we have 97 questions, but we will not put you through 97 questions today.
Understood.
I know you have a lot of things you can do with your valuable time, but just so you know, we wanted to be as thorough as we could.
Understood.
Just wanted to, in looking at your testimony, and you're speaking of the paid leave program, the UI program, and you also mentioned the workers' compensation program that has processed 8,000 workers' claims and adjudicated 700. You did not give us an indication of how much was spent on those. Do you have information on those?
I do. The workers' compensation number might take me a minute to provide. I've never asked about workers' compensation, so I wasn't expecting that one today. On the paid family leave program, and team, I'll need you.
You
to
indicated
help me.
over 130 million for
Correct,
20,000 claims. I've got that.
correct.
And you also indicated the UI 22,000 claims, 105 million in
Yes.
benefits.
I'll have to get the workers' compensation number.
All right, okay. All right, for those that the claims, yeah, what we have actually spent.
Yes,
Okay, because of that, you had 8,000 claims,
adjudicated and
700
700 formal hearings.
yes, okay.
Yes. So the
So-
team will pull that, and if I can get it pretty quickly, I can share it. If not, we can always follow up with that
All right.
amount spent.
Okay, thank you for that. You also referenced the ID.me
Yes.
program. And we have received a number of complaints or comments where individuals have tried to use it and have not been able to use, they've had difficulty using this ID.me. So can you help us understand how it's supposed to work
Sure.
when a individual is trying to use it?
Sure. So ID Me is an electronic identity proofing application, meaning to validate or authenticate someone's identity. As part of the initial claim filing process, a claimant has to verify their identity. They're asked a series of questions. They may upload information that would support validating and authenticating their identity. Now, some of the feedback that you've received are from individuals who have not been able to successfully and seamlessly authenticate or validate their identity. In those cases, we either require individuals to come in person and provide documentation to verify their identity. There may also be individuals who may not have access to technology to upload or complete the ID.me process, which we also offer in person at any of our 3 American Job Centers. But the point is, we have to, because fraud has become rampant as a result of the pandemic, validate and authenticate someone's identity before filing a claim.
Okay, so do you have for us today the number of claims that have been filed through the ID.me system?
I don't have the number of claims because you don't file claims through ID.me.
Okay.
Every single person who files an initial claim has to go through the ID.me process. So it's part of the claim. It's part of
So
the
it's the
claims process.
application.
It's a step in the application.
Okay.
It's not
I
a
got you.
claim in ID.me. Now, if you're asking how many claims have been filed,
Mhm.
we could share that information, but ID.me is not a claim.
All
thing
right,
filed.
so then I am to understand that if I want to file a claim and file it electronically,
Yes,
I use your portal for that. And part of the process is the ID.me,
correct. Yes, that is
which will
correct.
verify I am who I say I am.
Yes, that's absolutely
Okay,
correct.
Okay, all right, that's very important. Okay, so how many, do you keep a record or do you track the number of people who use the ID Me?
So everybody uses ID Me.
Okay.
So we do have a record of who uses it. And I am certain that my team probably has data available if of those who have unsuccessfully attempted to use that.
Yes, I would like to get from you the number of those who had attempted to use it and who were successful and those that were not successful.
Okay,
So we can understand this ID Me system better.
yep. So we can provide that as a
Okay.
follow-up.
And to that, this discussion about the use of the portal, how many claims have been filed to date
For unemployment
for
insurance.
unemployment insurance?
So to date, we are at approximately a little over 5,000 to date. And I want to remind people, because I feel like I'm asked probably every few hours at this point about how many claims are being filed, that the number is fluid. And so the number will change, and we anticipate, which I know we're going to probably spend some time talking about today, an increase in claims or a surge in claims. We anticipate that will likely happen in the next several weeks, but it's a little over 5,000 claims that have been filed to date.
All right, and so as of February 1, how many claims had been filed? Maybe I'll start there.
So as of February 1, thank you. As of February 1, we have, well, I'm going to give you as of February 22nd, which was last week. We have over 9,300 claims that have been filed. And that's both continue and initial claims.
All right, but at February 1, how many claims did you have?
Well, I want to provide you the most recent
I
information.
understand, that's
So I'll
fine.
have to go back and have someone dissect what February 1 is.
Okay.
But I
would
can tell you as of the 22nd.
Yeah, I've got the
February.
22nd. I made a note of that, but I'm curious as to how many had filed as of February 1.
We'll
So if I
find
could
that.
get that, that would be great.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. You also, in your statement, you indicated that a record-breaking 3.75 million settlement was from a major construction company as it relates to our First Source Act. And I'd like to know what is the status once a settlement is determined? What is the status of, how does that money get to DC, or does it get to DC?
Yeah, so that was actually Power Design, and it was an amended settlement from an initial settlement, I think in 22 or 23. I'm going to have Daniel King first introduce himself.
All right.
And then I'm going to have him speak to that. This is his area of expertise.
First Source?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Okay.
Welcome, Mr. King.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. So with the settlement that we partnered with the Office of the Attorney General on, that was for a number of construction projects and their subcontractors. I know that the Office of Attorney General really took over that process of settling over the last few years. We found that there was a number of intermediary companies that were hiding employees. So they wanted to make sure that those employees were getting the proper payroll deductions or payroll taxes paid for them, as well as employee sick leave. So those settlements are handled by the Office of the Attorney General. Our office within Wage Hour will handle individual claims. And we have a process that we follow in our DC code where we get those completed, our investigations completed within 60 days. And then those settlements or any additional work to get those individuals paid could take anywhere from 30 days because they have an appeal period. And then ongoing with our collection efforts could take an additional few months.
All right, so in other words, if within a quarter of our calendar, we could reach a settlement, but it may take a second quarter the following quarter before we actually have the remittance in our accounts at the government, correct?
Yeah, and I think it's important to talk a little bit about these settlement agreements and what goes to the injured worker versus what goes to the district. So if you can unpack that, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't have the specifics on the Office of Attorney General settlement, but I do know for the Office of Wage Hour, we had a matter of retaliation that we investigated and worked through over the course of our investigative period. And that individual received not just back wages for time out, but also liquidated damages of a record amount, $150,000 went to that one employee. Because our settlement efforts were focused on getting that aggrieved worker some type of remuneration first. And then the amount of penalty that came to the district was $10,000.
All right, and would this be a case that is in the private sector or in our government?
That was private sector employer.
Okay, all
Mhm.
right. Do you look at government complaints?
Sure.
Okay,
s-
from within the government?
Yeah, specifically, we have oversight for minimum wage enforcement, overtime, and living wage enforcement.
All right, so um does your record show any complaints from, let's say, uh MPD or the FOP union?
But we
It
probably
would
need to
be-
check our records on that to
Yes.
be specific.
It would be MPD, not necessarily the union, but it would be MPD. But we could certainly follow up with you on at least the last maybe 2 fiscal years, any complaints involving government agencies.
That would be very helpful. And I can talk with you offline
Sure.
about why that may be helpful,
Sure.
as we've had testimony in other entities about some of that. So I would appreciate knowing that. And I guess and the other agency we would be interested in is um, DC Public Schools. Okay.
All right, as a follow-up, we'll provide that.
Thank you very much. In 3 weeks?
Sure.
Okay, thank you so very much. With the, looking at your testimony for workforce development, the lead-free DC Community Activist Program, how many community activists received on-the-job training?
So that's actually our Division of State Initiatives. All of them receive on-the-job training. It's a really an amazing program, and I'd like to invite you out to visit as well at DC Water. And there in this cohort are approximately 25 participants, many of them returning citizens and DC residents that have had barriers to employment.
I'm glad that you have shared that. So how's it going out there at DC Water, Madam Chairperson?
It's going, and I'm so honored to chair the board of DC Water. I think it's a real opportunity to make sure that in a real substantial way, we can connect DC residents to employment opportunities at DC Water. And I have to tell you, it's something meaningful to have people who are doing work in the community that they actually live in. And sustainability efforts isn't something that we talk about readily in certain communities. And so I'm also really honored to bring people from the community into conversations about sustainability and clean water. So it's going very well.
Great. I'm so happy to hear that. It's been an entity that, I was here when we sort of moved it from the old Public Works
Yes.
into, so this is a big deal. And there's a strong feeling that it was community created. So this is very important. And as you know, DC Water is all over the city. The tunneling, many of us have lived through the years of that and are looking for a higher horizon before us. So thank you very much for that. And we're proud that you're able to get that important agency focus on jobs and jobs for DC residents.
Yes, and
So-
an amazing, talented management team there, and they do really work. And council member, you should be proud. DC Water is really setting an example for the country.
Excellent. So we'll give you another few weeks to get your feet wet there, but expect when we come back to talk budget, you'll be able to tell us how many DC residents are employed within the universe of the entire employment of DC Water.
I will have that information available to share.
All right, okay. And let's go a step further. Let's talk about their personnel budget, what the total budget is, and what percent is payments, salaries for DC
Okay,
employees.
okay.
We're gonna get on top of this stuff here.
I will work with the DC Water team and we'll get that information.
Okay, thank you, thank you. There was a time I knew some of the managers over there, but they retired, what have you. Okay. I wanted to ask you about the Infrastructure Academy. And if you could sort of help us understand the relationship with the utility partners that are in the Infrastructure Academy.
Sure. So we actually have really strong relationships with the Infrastructure Academy. And I think the relationships we have are also a national model. Matter of fact, the mayor of Austin, Texas, brought his whole team out to visit the DC Infrastructure Academy, and they now have replicated to a T our exact model, including our employer partners. So it's an example of a public-private partnership. Pepco, Washington Gas, DC Water, WMATA, and all of their subs come to the table as partners, and they agree to customized training. And in return, we prepare and build a talent pipeline of DC residents who are able to immediately go into vacant positions they have. And so it's the sort of partnership that I aim to recreate in all of our programs at DOES.
All right, and so of these programs, it indicates that you have 767 individuals that were served in FY 24. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so you mentioned these different entities, the utilities primarily, and WMATA and water, which is also a utility. How many went through or were trained through their programs in each of these utility groups?
So from there were 351 that successfully completed programs and went into employment.
What's the number again? 300
About 351 that went into employment.
Okay. Now, were the employment based with the utility company, or were they trained and therefore now I have my sort of shingle and I can go and get myself a job that relates? So do we know?
No, we know. So we train them. It's
Mhm.
customized training based on the needs of the employer. In this
Okay.
case, it's the utility. And then they're already coming to the table saying, here are the jobs we have available. So in the partnership, we know how many jobs are available. We train to the number of jobs that are available.
Right.
And that's
And-
both the company itself and the subcontractors, because there are opportunities with the subs as well.
All right, and in that training process, are individuals like I'm number 63 and you're training me for job number 72 that is with Pepco, so that I know I'm training for a particular job. So upon completion of the training program, I'm going to work at that particular trade or craft.
Uh, y- that's pretty much the way that it goes. So we know up front how many jobs are available. And then we train a number of people based to those jobs. We do account for attrition. So we tend to enroll a few over, based on the number of jobs that we have. But it is pretty one-to-one in terms of a match. What we want to do, and what I've tried really hard to do, is get out of this idea of we're just going to train 1,000 people, but we only have 5 jobs available. It does a disservice to
Okay.
the person that's in the training program. So this is why I keep emphasizing customized training, employer partner at the table. We know upfront the number of jobs available. That way we're managing everyone's expectations.
All right, I was curious because you just informed us that there were 351, job matches of the 767. So I was wondering what happens to those that are not matched to one of these jobs. They're trained now. I'm trained as an electrician.
Yeah.
I'm number 67. So what do I do if I'm not matched to a job, let's say with Pepco or one of the other entities?
So the 351 successfully completed
Ah,
and then went to employment.
okay.
The
And you
the
said,
lesser of the 750
uh-huh,
did not successfully complete. And there's a whole host of reasons why. You could have attendance problems, you may have substance abuse problems, you may not be ready for work, you may find employment somewhere else and no longer want to be engaged in the training program, which is a commitment that you have to make.
all right. So of the programs that operate as part of the Infrastructure Academy, within 3 weeks, can you indicate to us the title of the program, the number that were enrolled in it, the number that completed it, and then the third category, those that actually were matched to a job that is offered by and through this program?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. You also mentioned that, and I guess I'm going to ask the same of these other, you said along with training programs, the Office of Talent and Client Services work to connect district residents to high demand jobs and careers. Is this the same? Are these the same set of jobs are, or is this another group of jobs? When you say high demand,
So it's inclusive of
Ah.
all of the
I got you.
jobs. And so the Office of Talent and Client Services are designed to be like internal recruiters and headhunters for DC residents that are looking for job opportunities. So our reach is broad. It's both private sector and government jobs. Matter of fact, I think we held, and now I'm going off of memory here, I think we held 57 or 58 job fairs last year that TCS was responsible for coordinating and putting on.
Mhm.
And so we look across the district, and now I've even charged them with looking across the region for job opportunities for DC residents.
Yes, your note says 57 hiring events. That's
Oh.
the jobs training program.
Glad I remember. I've only been thinking about unemployment insurance, so I'm glad I remembered that
Okay, and
that number.
you also said it was 3,342 residents that had access through, I guess, these fairs.
Correct.
Okay, but that doesn't tell us of that number, how many were actually hired and resulting from the fair.
Correct. So that's a number that we can provide
Would
for you. Yes.
Please, thank you. We really, in 3 weeks, we really need that. We want to make sure that the work that you're doing is fully supported as much as possible through our budget process. Without some of the information, I don't want my colleagues like, Councilmember Henderson here, who's looking for money for health programs and what have you, to try and zap your money. So I want to make sure we have a complete record of what has been accomplished through the efforts of your agency.
Understood.
Okay. You indicated that you had 10,000 applications thus far for the Summer Youth Employment Program. I think last year, in 2024, you had around 20,000. Do you anticipate by the end of this week that you'll end up with 20,000 applications, or are young people no longer interested in the summer?
Oh,
program?
no. Our young people love the Summer Youth Employment Program, their parents, their grandparents, their aunties and uncles. I anticipate by the end of the application and certification period that we will have, if not 20,000, very close to it. We have had those numbers consistently, at least for 9 years that I've been here.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop and come back and chat with you more, but I want to acknowledge that Councilmember Henderson has joined us, and I'm sure she has some burning reasons to be here with us. Councilmember Henderson.
Some burning reasons to be here. It's the Department of Employment Services, and we've got a lot of stuff going on.
A lot.
How much time do I have? Councilmember?
10 minutes.
Okay.
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
All right. I'll just sort of pick up where Councilmember Bonds was talking about in terms of the Summer Youth Employment Program. Now, I've heard this in a variety of different ways, but I'll just ask again, why don't we pay our summer youth participants full minimum wage?
So we do for our 22 to 24-year-olds, they
Yep.
make minimum wage. Our 14 to 21-year-olds, we don't. The 14 and 15-year-olds are not able to legally work. And in terms of what is age appropriate, we try to land on a wage that makes sense from a budget perspective and takes into consideration a number served. And then 2, we look at the rates of all of our programs. And so I do have some concerns, and I've received feedback of paying, our youngest participants minimum wage when their parents who are in our program are also making minimum wage. And so we try to strike a balance across the entire agency
Sure.
of all of the pay rates.
How much are we paying for 14, 15-year-olds?
14 and 15-year-olds are $6.25 an hour.
Okay. Like less than minimum wage in much of the country, who are still on $7.25.
But they're not working. The 14 and 15-year-olds are not actually physically going to a job and working. They're in
Mhm.
career exploration opportunities
Okay.
and camps.
So for the 15 to 21-year-olds, how much are they making?
Yeah, so 16 to 21-year-olds are making $9 an hour. And the 16 and 21-year-olds are in internship job experiences.
Okay. Have we ever explored for that particular age group, doing a wage increase?
We have explored it. And what I have to carefully balance is making sure I can serve as many young people as possible, and within the budget that we have. And so we land at a place that we think is reasonable and also allows us to maximize the largest number of youth that we can serve.
Okay. I just, if I were 17 and a young person in DC, I would seek a job outside of the summer youth program, knowing that I can make double that in the private market if I were to get a job at ice cream shop or something like that. Okay. In April of 2023, we had asked the city administrator about some of the annual reports for SYEP for FY 21, 22, and 23. We were told they were still being finalized. And so I'm curious, my understanding is that none of these reports have been published yet. So where are they?
So I believe as of today, and my team will fact check this, but I think they are on, all of them are on the website now, I think, except for 24.
Okay, when will 24 be finalized?
24 probably will be finalized in the next 45 to 60 days.
Okay. Right, I want to ask about the Career Ready Early Scholars Program.
Yes.
So the council provided some additional one-time funds in FY24 in order to add 50 additional participants for summer 2024. Were all 50 of those seats filled?
They were.
Great.
And I want to say on the record and publicly, thank you for your support for the CREST program. I'm sure you will see probably a lot of grandparents and parents and aunties come up and thank you as well, because it's been a tremendous success. All 50 slots were filled and we have had an overwhelming amount of interest.
That's great. How many total for last summer? People?
I
Young people.
believe there were 358. 358 young people, I think, last year. And, oh, I was right. 358 students served last year in
Somebody was doing her studying.
and 24. I tell you, these programs, I know like the back of my hand these days, although I'm only thinking and talking about UI, it seems like. This year, we are going to serve 545 students. We're offering a spring break program,
Okay.
which will have 80 students. And the first 48 hours, we received over 1,500 applications. By the
In
time
48 hours.
in 48 hours, by the time we ended the workday on the day we launched, we had about 1,000 applications in less than 10 hours.
That's great. And I think that speaks to the desire and need of, I like to refer to them as our tween population, right? So they're not there on the 14, 15, they're too young for SYEP. They think they're too cool to do DPR. So we got to figure out how to do it. I'd be very interested to hear the feedback for how the spring break program goes. Because again, right, that's another, a week where you have young people who idle.
Yes.
And so I think this is really great. And so I'm glad to hear that we're going to be expanding it and going forward. I must ask, if you had to name one of the most significant challenges of executing this program, what would that be?
I would say that there is such great interest in the program, probably the limited number of slots
Okay.
that are available. I'll tell you that I've been looking at both this program and the SYEP program together, and trying to better understand. And I've asked my team to look and do some data analysis on trends and where we see the most attrition in the summer. And if there were places that we can add more slots in some age groups where we have higher applications and less attrition. And so we'll be working on what I'm going to call right sizing the program and maybe potentially adding a few more slots in the younger, the CRESP program.
Right. Okay. That's good. I want to turn to Infrastructure Academy. I know you were having some conversations with
Yep.
the chairwoman about that, but so my understanding is that the physical location at Spin Garden was supposed to be done in spring. That now has been moved to fall of 2025. Can you explain what some of these construction delays have been?
Sure. So we've had pipeline challenges in terms of materials, equipment and supplies needed for Spin Garn. Also, as the project timeline slips, so do the cost, or so, inflation
Yep.
increases, and the cost of materials and supplies and labor also increase. So
Okay.
we've had to look at the budget, look at the scope of the project, make some adjustments, add some additional funding. I am hopeful, and I I am a very invested executive sponsor of this project, so I'm talking to
Okay.
the architects.
I
and
only got like two,
VDS.
I got a little bit of time.
I'm
Okay.
working on it.
Great. I want to ask about some of the program pieces of it. So
Sure.
I have a lot of conversations with some of the, what I would call infrastructure unions, carpenters, painters, steel workers, et cetera. And it's interesting to me that we say we have an infrastructure academy, but we don't have any partnerships with those groups who have apprenticeship programs that exist. They have training programs most often in Maryland, but they're looking for space in DC. And every time I talk to them, I'm like, well, have you talked to the folks at the Infrastructure Academy? Because I feel like this is a neat partnership.
Mhm.
You have space, they have a program, an apprenticeship and jobs. So why can't we marry the two?
So today we don't have space.
Well,
right?
Okay.
But in the
in
future,
theory,
right? But in the future, we will have space. So a few things. One, apprenticeship is a big component of this. Two, we want to partner with the unions and feel that the unions are our vital partner. I am pushing our union partners on making sure that the apprentices they want to bring into the DC Infrastructure Academy are DC residents.
Understood. And one of the big challenges, of course, is that, and this is for any resident, right? I would love for everybody to be able to do all the things in the
Mhm.
district. However, all of the construction projects don't exist in the district. And one of the challenges they have is you get trained, you get certified, and then you can't make it to the job site at MGM, for instance, because you don't have transportation and there's no metro out there. And so I think we have to sort of better frame our expectations with these participants around, you're not going to perhaps be able to do all the infrastructure work in the confines of the District of Columbia.
Sure.
And you got to get comfortable with that. I do want to ask really quickly about the pharmacy tech program, because I feel like I don't really think of that as part of infrastructure per se in the way that we deal with utilities and construction and otherwise. How is that program faring in comparison to the utility work?
Amazing. We just had a graduation at Howard last week, where we saw 20 graduates get their white coats, and they're headed off for their externship, getting their provisional license, and hopefully, not hopefully, they will have jobs. Cedar Hill, Howard University Hospital, and CVS.
Yeah, CVS, because
The CVS has been a great partner. of
that's
ours.
great. The lines at CVS, not great.
Yeah.
They need more pharmacy techs.
They got talent. They got talent coming. I just, and Councilmember Bonds, if I can just have a moment here, there is an important point that I want to underscore, which is that any union partner that we bring in, we have to train DC residents. And so I'm not sure if there's a clear understanding that some of the apprenticeship and union partners want to use the space, but they'd be training non-DC residents. And so my dollars can't go and won't go to non-DC residents. And so if there's a meeting of the minds there, we're ready. And we're
Yeah,
on board.
but I think that there is an opportunity for partnership in sort of the flip of right now, in the absence of any of these apprenticeship programs being based in DC, all of the DC residents who are being part of these union programs are having to travel to Maryland.
Yes.
And so like, we got to figure out some happy medium through conversation, but we got to get the location figured out first.
I told the secretaries of Maryland and Virginia, I'm coming for their jobs too. And so I'm fully comfortable, and I share with the mayor of changing this orientation that you only have to work in DC. DC is an amazing place to live. You can work in Maryland and Virginia and come home to DC.
Right.
And so we are big and supportive of that. I just want to make sure that our union partners understand that you train, we can send people out to work, but the people you bring into the district in our locally funded facility have to be DC residents. I cannot pay to train Maryland and Virginia residents.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Henderson. I wanted to continue, I always like to go through the testimony first and then get to questions. Thanks to Councilmember Henderson. She asked a few questions that are on my list, so I won't have to go through those. Remember that 98 list of questions that I have. Okay. And the reason we try to be very comprehensive in asking the questions, we want to make sure that whatever the programs are that we're doing across the government are really reaching the public. And so that's the reason, not to just keep you here and just chat. Okay. Want to make sure. Okay. All right. I wanted to ask about this, back to the youth apprenticeship program. You indicated that the Workforce Innovation Consortium has funded 150 slots for out-of-school youth to participate in youth apprenticeship programs in technology and traditional skills. What is this program? Is this program called the Workforce Innovation Consortium?
Oh, I'm so excited about it. I would
Okay,
like
all right.
my deputy here, Kenneth, to introduce himself first.
All right,
And then I'm going to ask him to respond
all right,
to it.
sure.
And good morning,
Good
Councilwoman
morning.
Bonds.
Afternoon, well,
It's
1 minute,
afternoon.
just finally, it
Uh,
reached
I just
1 minute after.
Well, good
Okay.
afternoon. How you doing? I'm
Good
Kenneth
afternoon,
Walker.
sir.
I'm Deputy Director of Federal Workforce Programs with DOES. And as the director said, the Workforce Innovation Consortium is a very exciting project. So what we understood at DOES is that we needed to have a smarter insight in ways in which we were using public dollars to like impact the employment community. So what we wanted to do was like bring together a convening of employers, businesses, our higher education providers, community-based organizations, training organizations to really pinpoint what the needs were in each specific industry. We isolated 2 specific industries as part of the consortium, all related towards what we saw in terms of opportunity, that being IT and skills trade. So through that work, they are providing us with recommendations and strategies on potential inroads in where we should spend, funding or focus our workforce development strategy in. As part of that work, we wanted to make sure that we were serving the district residents. So through the consortiums, we funded 150 slots that focused on out-of-school youth training specific to some of those industries we saw high need in. So for our IT programs, that focuses on cybersecurity and AI. And then our construction skills trade programs will focus on carpentry and electricians.
And I just want to say, because I feel particularly strong
Mhm.
about this with careers in technology, is that there are some communities, especially low income and disenfranchised communities, where we are consumers of technology. We're not producers of technology. And there are a lot of careers that do not require a college degree that we can train people in, where they can go into making 6 figures. And we went to the Consumer Electronics Show this year, where I spoke as a government leader in residence, and we brought apprentices and we had a booth. And we had people come by and see homegrown DC talented young people from communities of color talk about how they are working in technology and producing technology. So we want to have strategic targeted investments that are going to lead to life-changing and family-sustaining wages, which is why we started this initiative.
Thanks for that response. It just brings to mind the value of these types of training opportunities. And I wonder, what kind of resources do we have going into the future? Are there plans to expand these arenas, because there's such a interest in the public in anything that relates to IT? And so how are you going to do that?
So we've been using our federal funds to support this effort as a pilot. I anticipate, unless some sort of change, that we will continue to use our federal funds, but that's how we've been funding it.
All right, okay. So when we talk budget, you'll talk about the opportunity to put a little more resources in these things that we know work
Mhm.
and we have the interest and can lead to a bona fide job.
For
So
sure.
Thank you. All right, okay. Another point that you made was you talked about the Pathway to Public Service program. where you place, is this the same as,
It's the HBCU program.
okay, that's what this is?
Yes.
Well, there's so many acronyms for things now, so I'm,
Yes.
like, how many different, okay, all right, so this is that one. All right, so these are young people who are enrolled at a historic Black college. In this instance, UDC and Howard, am I
Mhm.
correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, that had just graduated in their senior year and wanted a career in public service.
okay.
Mhm.
And so they will then go on to spend what, a year within DC agencies, very much like the other fellowship program. I have to ask again this year, why don't we have one package? Or why is there fellowship for other university graduates and then the pathway to public service? What's
So we,
why are
we
they
have
separate?
we have similar programs. And if you look at, if you take a step back and from a 50,000-foot level, historically, students from disenfranchised communities haven't had the same level of access to work experience and have difficulty upon graduation obtaining employment. And so what this program does is create a pathway for jobs in public service. And so we heard your feedback and created the College Fellowship Program, which is very similar to this Pathways to Public Service program. And it's open to all college graduates despite if it's a HBCU or not. So we just launched that program when, Kenneth?
In December 2024.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about.
Yes, tell us a little bit about that.
Oh,
And
it's very exciting. So I'm happy to have the opportunity to. So we started off with recruiting young people that were within 2 years of graduation. Exactly to director's point, we see so many young people that come in and say, day in and day out that we cannot find employment because we don't have the prerequisite work experience to get these positions and these jobs. So in response to closing the opportunity gap here that we're seeing in the district, we said, well, let's figure out a mechanism to get that work experience for these young people. So in December, we went through recruitment, and in January, we went through recruitment where we identified 30 individuals to start as our inaugural cohort to the program. Now, in addition to going and serving at their fellowship site for 6 months, they are on site at these different fellowship sites for 6 months. But we also combine that with mentorship and professional development training. So I know that in the WICs presentation, you spoke to soft skills, right? So we want to make sure that we're addressing some of those things, putting them through how to critically think, communications, professional etiquette and such. At the end of the fellowship program, the goal is then to move these individuals into employment outcomes. There are some host sites that have already agreed to that, and then that's the work of my team for the next 6 months to ensure that as many employers as possible take on these young people, but that's how we're operating the fellowship program.
And now that I think about it, I haven't seen any emails from Councilmember Bonds or Councilmember Henderson's office, and we might have a couple of fellows that need to be placed. So I'm going to follow up with you all to see if there's an opportunity to place a fellow in your office.
I would welcome it.
We
To be
can
very
work
honest.
that out. We'll bring a table and a chair and make sure they have a laptop.
Mhm.
We can find a way to get to yes, I'm certain.
Well, you can get to yes with me if you're posing it to me.
Done.
Yes. Thank you
right.
very much. We have all kinds of arrangements for seating. Okay.
Perfect.
But I
We'll
think,
take you
I
up
think
on that.
that's great. Now the question becomes, after 6 months, what happens to these individuals? I know you're saying you're working on opportunities to connect them to a longer period of employment. How are you actually, or have you built in a model where you're going to track the future of these individuals that we train? Because this is a tremendous resource, but also we want to make sure that it's successful.
Second and fourth quarter after exit of the program. Those are our employment metrics that we track across the board in the agency.
All right. And do you track also the service that they have provided to the agency? You know, whether or not it worked, it was a good match, and in the staffer really contributed to the wholeness of the office, or is there something else
Oh,
that
oh, yeah,
you?
we definitely included qualitative metrics in the on the host site side. So all host site providers of the fellowship program, we went through extensive interviews, as in, we had a group that more than tripled what we actually ended up with. And what we wanted to make sure is that we prioritize host sites that had a genuine interest first to move that young person into employment post program. So that was a start. Secondary, we do have monthly meetings with the host site and the fellow together to review competencies in terms of what they were due to learn on the job site. So, how's it going? How is this young person progressing? How have they been impactful to the host site? So we definitely intend to collect that qualitative information while always working towards a position towards getting this young person employed at the end of that 6-month period.
All right. Well, you mentioned, and we had a little bit of discussion earlier about the Career Ready Early Scholars Program and the great interest that we see in community and how it's working. If for no other reason than it occupies the young person's, time and attention, which is sorely needed. We also have summer programming that is done through other entities in our government, where we have grants that we give to community to occupy, to put in place programming to occupy a young person's time and attention. I wonder if there's been any discussion about how we uh, merge those programs into this Career Ready Early Scholars Program that we know is working and we're getting good return on. Have you thought about that?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about our resources
So we
collectively.
last summer, we partnered with DPR, and two host sites were actually recreation centers. And so we have had those conversations. And DPR has been great to work with. We have a lot of DOES alumni at DPR, and they understand and they value the program. So yes, we continue to have those conversations and to gain partnership from those other agencies.
Thank you. I suspect that the reason for these programs is very much the same. Your programs and the programs that are done in other agencies. And it just seems to me if we could bring those programs together, we might have a very enriched process and get some outcomes that are dependable and also help a young person to think about, well, maybe I don't want to be a firefighter, but I think I do want to be a nurse, that kind of stuff, so that we can move more definitively in getting our community employed. I think about how, I think last year I was informed by the director that for every DC resident that wants a job, we have 2 jobs. And I'm trying to figure out how do we get them into one of those 2 jobs. And I know you are too, that's your work, but that is very critical. So how we take the resources that we have collectively and come away with a real package. So. You can talk a little bit about the Healthcare Alliance and what you're doing there. I know that we're now focused on health services in general, those that the Hospital Association is particularly interested in understanding. There is this facility, and this health facility has so many different kinds of jobs, and how do we focus on that? I mean, are we giving some specialized attention to that? I know we have the new hospital, Cedar Hill, coming online, but I mean, just in general, since they have this, the Hospital Association for years has had a draft of need for employees.
So we have actually funded the Hospital Association last year to help us with some coordination and convening. Kenneth, do you want to talk a little bit about these target investments we've made and the training programs we've selected?
Yeah, surely. And, Council Member Bonds, we, on a monthly basis, we always look at the areas like hottest jobs reports, and then we see just this high quantity of positions that we know district residents can get, CNA, radiological technicians, surgical technicians. And we said, you know what's our quickest way to be able to get district residents connected to those opportunities? And one thing was to work directly with these universities and also these medical systems that already provide these trainings, right? So how would we work with them to be able to prioritize and pathway district residents into these training programs and lead into employment? Exactly what we have done. So we already had been working with Trinity University for their community health worker certification. So to that, we have now added our CNA course to that as part of the alliance work that we're going to do. So many people come to us interested in that CNA pathway. We wanted a identifiable way to pipeline individuals into that. We also understood that, Howard University and our work with Howard University Hospital, they also have a gamut of professional training programs that our district residents could take advantage of. The director made comments on the pharmacy technician program a bit earlier, but we've seen, this high concentration of district residents that are interested in that program, and now that can pipeline through Howard University, pair that with now externship and work experience and leading to placement thereafter. And then also we have programs with MedStar as well. So like now working with we've got the university work down, how we working with these major hospital systems. So through MedStar, we're able to do we funded a radiology technician program along with the surgical tech program. And I'm sitting back in my chair. I'm just like, man, if I had the opportunity to be a surgical
Me
tech,
too.
and be able to get your training paid for and the supportive services to wrap around that with a direct pipeline into employment thereafter, it became like a no-brainer situation for DOES and MedStar. And basically seeing the success of some of these programs fuels us up to continue to pursue how can we expand this initiative in the future.
Thank you very much for that. Could you provide me with a list of the different types of jobs, career opportunities that we are currently involved in helping to get people trained for within 3 weeks? That would be very helpful. Healthcare, but also all of the different industries that are impactful here in the District of Columbia. I think it would be very helpful. I wanted to talk about health aides, the home care aides in particular. That's an area where there is a tremendous need. And I wonder if it's on the radar of DOES that we need to work with those, get us some folk who want to do this. It's one thing, I was curious, a few years ago, we spent a lot of time and attention talking about the plight of those who help with our young people in our, daycares and what have you. But we have, senior daycare situations. And as the city grows older, I'm very concerned about that. And I hear about it from the elderly community.
I have a lot of emerging thoughts on this. And we've heard a lot from the advocacy community about not doing enough to grow the talent pipeline for home healthcare aides. And you all know this, better than anyone. But there's a bit of a challenge here. There's and some complexity. One, keeping people in the home healthcare aide profession or occupation. Two, the wages that are being offered. And then three, the credentialing or education or training programs that are available. I think I understand that the number of home healthcare aide training programs have decreased. I think it was at 6 last year and now we're down to 2. And so I have some emerging thoughts on this, and I think one, it's going to take a partnership with the home healthcare and the advocacy community to make the occupation look attractive. It's the same sort of challenges that we have sometimes with the skilled trades and getting younger people into the skilled trades. We've had to do a lot of work to make that occupation attractive. So one, we got to do that. Two, addressing the wages, I think is also going to help the occupation look more attractive to people. And then better understanding the CNA and the home healthcare aide training requirements and where there is overlap and what those requirements are, I think is work that we're going to have to do collectively with the advocacy community. But it is a difficult occupation to get people to retain people in, not necessarily to get them in, but to retain them.
Okay, I want to just move to a different area.
Okay.
I want to talk about Ms. McDaniels, and who was formerly in your employment from the perspective of when was she hired and when was she terminated?
Sure. So Miss McDaniels, and I have some limitations on what I
Of course,
can
of
share and
course, sure.
what I know. But she was hired at the Department of Employment Services, I believe, late summer of 2023, and someone will have to get me the exact dates. And then left the agency in the fall of 2024.
All right, okay.
We can get the exact dates.
All right,
for you.
okay. Excuse me, let me finish my
No,
question.
no, I'm just
please.
trying to,
Yeah,
I'm trying to time,
I'm in the middle of asking a question now.
no. Just trying to
Okay.
understand if you're gonna
Of
allow me to
course.
speak another round or should I
Of
go? That's all I'm
course.
asking. It's been 20 minutes, that's all.
I don't have it. I don't do this to your hearing. I do it.
A
All
lot of
right.
hearings going on right now.
Okay, excuse us, please. We were just chatting about timelines. Okay. I wanted to know what role did she serve in when she was with your agency?
Deputy Director of the Division of State Initiatives.
Okay, state initiatives. Okay. And in that role, I assume she had oversight of grants and contracts.
She had oversight of the Bureau, and the Bureau utilizes grants and contracts as procurement
Okay,
tools to
all right. Okay.
facilitate the operations of the Bureau.
All right, all right. And so, given the circumstances that we saw most recently in the media, I therefore assume that, all checks and balances are in place in that division.
Correct, that's correct.
All right, that's all I needed to put on the record.
Appreciate
All right.
it. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for that. And now we'll turn to Council Member Henderson, who has more questions or comments.
Okay.
Councilwoman.
Thank you. I did want to follow up on the questions about the pharmacy program, which is important because we have a lot of vacancies throughout the city.
Sure.
You mentioned that the second cohort graduated in February.
First cohort graduated in February.
Sorry, the second cohort started in February.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So how many individuals do we have thus far who have gone through or have completed the program?
I believe we had approximately 20 graduate in the first cohort,
Okay.
and I think 25 just started a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. And of the 20 who graduated, all of them were able to successfully complete their certification exam?
Yes, those are the ones who graduated are the ones who passed the exam.
Oh,
and
I
are
see.
Going on to
Okay.
the externship.
So those who graduated may not have been the start of how many started the program?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so as part of the 22-week training program, are we offering, I'm assuming they're doing exam prep through that program?
Yes. It's very rigorous. They do it through Howard, and they do exam prep at Howard. They also do classes during the week. I think they meet 3 to 4 times a week during the training component of the program.
Okay. In terms of job placement for the first cohort who graduated,
Yes.
how have
So they
successful-
just graduated last Thursday.
Okay.
They're about to start their externships. I believe most of them are doing their externships at CVS. And CVS has come to the table and has job opportunities. So does Cedar Hill and some of the other hospital partners as well. So we anticipate positive placement there.
Okay. In terms of the breakdown of funding for the program, how is it divided between DOAS and Howard?
So we are funding it 100%.
Okay.
Including paying wages for externship. We didn't pay wages to attend class,
Interesting.
but we are paying it's a paid externship and we are covering those wages
Okay.
through federal funding at that.
Well, are we certain said federal funding will continue to exist?
You know, I'm not really certain about anything these days, but based on what I know and what we have allocated this year, we'll continue until we can.
Okay. I wanted to ask about the community health worker program.
Yes.
Community health worker in general, at least on the health side of things, is kind of one of those. I have some who want it to be licensed.
Mhm.
And then I have some who say, no, keep it flexible so anyone can sort of come into this space, which makes it very difficult in terms of placement in the health job ecosystem, because it is not a licensed position. And therefore, folks of varying backgrounds and of varying degrees of preparation are applying for these jobs or otherwise. In your pre-hearing responses, you guys did note that you did have some challenges with recruitment and retention and marketing materials for this program. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this?
Sure. Kenneth, I'm going to ask you to respond.
Yeah, and Councilmember Henderson, I think that you summarized it extremely well, you know, in terms of like the certification, not being a nationally recognized certification, also like leading like to the job pathway. So, you know, we've actually explored that, and that's actually an active conversation we're having internally. Like, you know, are there things that we need to work with Trinity on to better improve this program, or even like pivot in terms of like strategy? So we're having some conversations about that, but I think that you summarized the issues that we're experiencing extremely well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that folks like
Yeah.
to promote the community health worker as part of it, but it just, generally speaking, it's only community-based organizations that are hiring
Yeah.
CHWs, not hospitals, not clinics, et cetera. And so there's definitely a ceiling in
Mhm.
terms of where folks can go without being licensed in the field.
I'm going to ask Dan to remind me, because we've been working on a Cedar Hill employment plan. Didn't we, or Kenneth, didn't we identify where, maybe I'm making this in my head, where community health workers could work, like other occupations? Didn't we? Maybe in my mind I
Okay.
did. I want to follow up with you because I think I did some research and some work,
Okay.
excuse me, on where community health workers could work that were not licensed, and we were thinking about like the new hospital. So I want to follow up and see what we came up with, because there aren't many opportunities, but there's just literally a couple or a few.
Right. And I mean, in that vein, I'm curious how many people have participated in this program thus far with Trinity,
You have that kind of.
or in the last fiscal year?
Yeah, I can speak to where we're currently at, Councilwoman. We have 12 individuals enrolled into our program. So we fund two different cohorts of the community health worker program through Trinity. That number as of right now has been 12 and 12 for this program year.
Okay.
I want to be transparent with you, that I'm not sure we're going to continue to make the investment next year.
I was going to ask that question. You know, I don't want to say that per se, but at some point we're going to have to ask the question of whether or not the investment on our side is worth it on the
Correct.
output on the other
Yes.
side. And at least on the health side, as there's continuous sort of, right, DC Health wants to license it, then I've got a bunch of folks saying, but if you do that, then you're going to be leaving folks out. That being said, this looks very different outcomes wise than even what we're talking about on the pharmacy tech.
Yes. And
Program.
so we are looking at that investment. I'm not committed that we're going to continue to make that investment next year. We are seeing lots of opportunity for patient care tech, pharmacy tech, sterile
Processor.
processing.
Botanist, there's there's.
Oh, no, the phlebotomists.
Yeah.
So
They need 'em.
we're looking at our investments. We're not sure that's going to continue on, but there
Okay.
are a lot of great programs that Trinity has in the healthcare industry that we think we could change and move around our investment.
Okay. And Trinity is not your only partner for which you're working with on some of these things,
Oh,
correct?
no,
Okay.
no.
Because, right, Academy of Hope and some other places
Sure.
who have really strong training programs. I don't want us to have to reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
In that regard, not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but in supporting of some areas, I've just had a very long conversation with the Office of Long-Term Care Ombudsman. And this came up during healthcare finance, and we're going to have a hearing with Councilmember Bond specifically on long-term care workforce, because this question around home health aide, certified nursing assistants, medication administration techs
Yes.
is another one where a lot of our nursing homes and skilled nursing facilities are needing folks as well. This is a thing that is coming. And so, when we have these questions around how can we work with all parts of our workforce continuum, DOES, the community college, et cetera, to try to train folks to address some of these job placement issues, I think this is something that comes to the forefront.
Yep.
Okay. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask some questions about unemployment.
I've been waiting for it.
Given everything that is going on right now. And I had a conversation with the city administrator, and he did say that obviously over the last 2 years or so, we have been able to build back up our reserves, but every day is a new day in the district with this new administration. And so I wanted to ask if you could speak a little to what you all have seen trend wise
Sure.
since January.
Sure. So a couple of things to keep in mind. Right now, we're processing our regular unemployment claims. So that's our regular body of work. Then we have the presidential transition every 4 years in January, which could go as high as 25,000 people who could seek unemployment. So we're
Okay.
dealing with that.
So in normal transition every
Yeah, every-
4-ish years.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yep. So that's and that's unique to the district.
Okay.
Right. And then we now have massive federal layoffs. And so in terms of unemployment insurance claim numbers, I had it out somewhere. We currently, I got the February 1st number. So we currently have close to 9,000 total claims
Okay.
that have been filed.
These are new.
Yes. Wait, I just had my card. Maybe someone from the team. Oh, thank you. It's right in front of me. And so we have over 9,000 total claims that's been filed to date. We currently have over probably close to 800 UCFE claims. UCFE claims is unemployment compensation for federal employees. And I want to take this just really quick opportunity, and hopefully Councilmember Bonds, you'll allow me some grace here with time. There's an important distinction to make. You talked about the unemployment trust fund. We currently sit at about 375 million roughly dollars in the unemployment insurance trust fund. The unemployment compensation federal employee program is reimbursed by the federal government.
Okay.
That money does not come from the unemployment trust fund. The unemployment program is employer tax paid based on the first $10,500 of wages an employee makes. There is a cap. This is very different than the paid family leave program where there is no cap on wages. So when we talk about impacts to the unemployment insurance trust fund, I just want to manage everyone's expectations. The federal government essentially reimburses dollar for dollar. We draw down from Treasury to pay for the benefits of former federal employees.
Are they actually going to honor their part?
We are currently drawing down daily.
Oh, okay.
Today, we are currently drawing down on the federal employees who have filed for unemployment. And that includes those of transitioning from the Biden-Harris administration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to continue to talk about the UI
Sure.
program, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Okay. And in talking about it, I wanted to understand where we are with your FTE needs.
Okay. So the unemployment compensation program at DOES, probably when fully staffed has about 200 FTEs. We're not currently fully staffed right now. It is 100% federally funded. We do have vacancies. We actually made a substantial number of hires through the job fair that happened a week or two ago. So about 200 FTEs budgeted, that's federally funded, of which I'd say there's probably close to 70-ish claims examiners that are responsible for adjudicating and processing claims. We also have a call center staff where I think we have close to 50 people that work in the call center when fully staffed and everyone is present. That supports our UI operations as well. And so what makes my team probably different and more prepared than any other jurisdiction in the country is that those folks have a long tenure. They've been through government shutdowns, which we don't even want to hope is in our future, although it's a couple of weeks away. They've been through presidential transitions. They've been through the pandemic. So this is a unique skill set and a strong group of individuals that are prepared for what may come before us.
And so of the 50 call center staffers, how many are filled?
How many are filled?
Filled, yes. How many
I
are?
think right now we're probably in the mid 40s is my guess. I think we have less than 10 vacancies in the call center that are unfilled. And I know that we've made some hires.
Okay, so you don't have any exact numbers that you can give me at this time?
If my team can pull them for me, I
Okay.
can provide them. If not, we'll follow up.
All right, I would appreciate that.
Sure.
The call center FTEs and then the claim examiners FTEs, please. And then I would like to know, are they counted within your base of 200?
Yep. So I have
Okay.
60 claims examiner FTEs, and I have 17 vacancies there. And then what was the other question you asked
Call
for?
center.
I'll get the call center.
Okay. All right. I ask these questions because we sometimes hear from individuals that are not getting answers when they try to reach the call center. So I'm just wondering if it's an issue of not having personnel there available to answer or just what?
No, I wouldn't say that, and I haven't heard that feedback recently. I will tell you that on average in our call center right now, there is probably a call time of about, or a hold time of about 4 minutes. In FY24, we received over 199,000 calls. Where almost 80% of those calls were answered. And so I think our call center performs pretty well, and we learned from the pandemic. what we have also tried to do to prevent people for holding and waiting on calls is to have an expansive phone tree, which provides basic information that you would hear from an individual on the other end. And what I mean for that with that is that instead of waiting on hold to talk to someone about how to file a claim, there is a recorded response that tells you the exact same thing that a live person would tell you. And so we've tried to get smarter, and we have a lot of lessons learned from the pandemic on how to improve our call center operations. But I would say it operates and performs at a pretty high level right now.
All right, and I would imagine some individuals who get the recording are like, I want a real live person, and so that's
Sure.
part of the comments that we get.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, and folks can also go on a website, but they can also come in person as well. There's probably 3 different ways that you can get UI information.
I agree. I agree. I wanted to talk a little bit about wanted to talk about the UI program and the fact that last year, I think there were about 70,000 disputed claims. And I would like to know where the number is now.
I don't think we had 70,000 disputed claims. You mean that would like go to appeals?
Yes,
I don't think we've had 70,000 go through appeals
in
last year.
FY 23, I believe it was 73,000. And you were, at that time, you indicated that there were a variety of reasons. And the takeaway number we had from one of the hearings was like 70. But then they were consolidated into 5 or 6. They were grouped, in other words. And I wondered how we're doing with that. If we have concluded working through all of the appeals.
So I think here we're talking about both because the number 70 comes to mind when we talk about fraud.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So okay. So we still investigate fraudulent claims because we are responsible for investigating fraudulent claims. There may have been 70,000 claims that we've had to review that may have been deemed as fraudulent, meaning, and they may not even be real claims. They may just be fake claims and people attempting to file unreal unemployment insurance claims. I'm going to see if I can find the appeal number because I'm certain it's not 70,000. So I have in FY 24, I don't have the 23 number in front of me, but in FY 24, we were able to look at about 30,000 claims, which we think may have been fraudulent from our backlog. And so I don't have 70,000, but those 30,000 claims were probably not even real claims and certainly did not ever make it to appeals because it would be nearly impossible to have that many appeals go through OAH.
So of the 30,000, what is the total dollar amount of these fraudulent claims?
I will have to follow up with you. I'm not sure we actually calculate and even get to a point where we could determine a dollar amount if we determine the claim is fake.
All right.
But let me ask my team to see if we do have that sort of data available. I know I do not have it readily available
All right.
in front of me. So let me see what sort of analysis we could provide.
All right. Let me ask you this then. Of the claims that were filed in FY 24, do you at this point have a clear reading of the amount of claims that were paid that should not have been paid? I'll put it that way.
I don't have the amount of potentially fraudulent claims and payments that were made. I can tell you in FY 24, 22,722 claims were filed, and we paid out $106,574,279. I don't
Okay.
have
Right.
from there what we think may have been fraudulent or an overpayment. And you have to remember, our goal is to never get to a place, is to determine the fraud. So we never get to a place where we have to actually pay out
Okay.
the claim.
All right. So let's talk then about the overpayments. What amount was overpayment of the 22,000 claims?
I would have to follow up with you, Councilmember Bonds, on overpayment.
Yeah.
I don't have a
Okay.
breakdown of overpayments.
All right.
that
I
we can-
recall a couple of articles that have, newspaper articles, that have, made certain claims, claims, claims on the claims.
Sure.
And so very curious about what the reality is.
Okay.
You're the keeper of the data, so you would know.
Let me see
better
if we
than-
can, if we
yeah.
can find it before I leave here today,
All
we'll
right.
share that.
Okay, who conducts the staff training sessions for the unemployment benefit system, and how often does it occur?
So we have a host of trainings. The vendor for the unemployment insurance benefit system, who also has the same system in 38 states, 38 or 40 states, provides training. So that's done virtually, and there's also opportunities to do training in person. We also have bring in trainers to train the team as well. Last year, I think we may have had a total of 3 or 4 staff trainings for the unemployment team where we brought people in. And some of the things we offered were customer service, analyzing and adjudicating claims, you know, writing, different kind of personnel and management training. So there's the technical hard skills. And then there are some expanded topics like customer service as well.
Okay, and so for this, for your staff, is training sort of ongoing throughout the year, or is it clustered in maybe one quarter time of the year?
No, it's ongoing throughout the year.
Okay, all right. Can you tell us how adoption of the UIBS has affected insurance instances of fraud, overpayments, and the use of complaints?
Has it an effect? You mean,
Positive outcomes, hopefully.
well, okay, I have lots of positive outcomes.
All
So
right.
before we launched UIBS, we were using the 47-year-old Cobalt system. And so now we have a more modernized, efficient system. Our claims examiners can adjudicate the claims in the system versus using paper and resources outside of the system. So that should increase or decrease the amount of time it takes to process and adjudicate the claim. Our customers and claimants have access to a system that is much easier to use than our previous system. They can also look at the progress of their claim. There's also information available in different languages related to claim filing. So overall, it's leaps and bounds better than what we have ever had. And we've only had one system in the district.
47 years, yes.
47 years.
We're, what, 50 years old under home rule?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the information I wanted. It was an odd way to ask it, but wanted to make sure we put it on the record that this new system
Yes.
is leaps and bounds ahead of what we once had.
Yeah, and you're not really hearing about UI in the same way that, we've heard about it in the past. So we're pretty pleased about the new system.
Yes. Let's see. Does DOES plan on conducting job fairs or employment outreach events to assist district residents that maybe have been recently laid off from the federal government?
Absolutely. And we're in talks now with our employer partners and DCHR about it. But yes, and we've launched a website, fedsupport.dc.gov. That's fedsupport.dc.gov, where anyone that's been impacted could learn how to file for UI. It also lists all of the training programs and supports we offer across the district and at DOES.
All right, and in this information system, are you able to speak to finally helping those who were, I guess, probationary staff that was terminated, to distinguish how they would ultimately be eligible for UI?
Yeah, so there's two classes of separations here, the probationary period with potentially some language about performance. And then there is this deferred resignation group. And so on the separation under probationary period, there are two things. One, we're going to process claims like we always do. And so any individual that's been impacted and their duty station is in the District of Columbia, they should go online and file. And we will review each claim like we do. That's our process. But we've also asked the federal government for additional guidance. Any guidance they can provide on how these claims should be treated. And so we are awaiting additional guidance. But in the meantime, people should follow the process that has been in place, and they can file for unemployment insurance benefits.
So for the District of Columbia, I think I read where you had indicated that we have about 71,000 DC employees.
Residents.
Yes, who are
Yes.
residents, yes, when I say DC,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, so about 71,000 DC residents that are in civilian jobs located in the District of Columbia in the federal government. There are about 191,000 federal jobs located in DC.
Right.
And about 400,000 in the region, Northern Virginia,
Mhm.
DC, and Maryland.
I'm just thinking of the volume of what it could be and the inquiries that you might get. And so that was the nature of my first, round of questions. And the second round discussing FTEs and what it might look like.
Understood.
I try to be a realist about this.
And the unemployment insurance program is 100% federally funded.
Yes.
And so, we always are good stewards of our funds and we maximize every dollar we can. I know that we will, in the next several weeks to come, see an onslaught of claims. But the team has the wherewithal and understands, based on our experience, what could come. And I feel pretty confident about the team I have on place on Minnesota Avenue.
All right. When do you usually request reimbursement from the federal government? What I'm asking really is it on a monthly basis, every 2 weeks, or quarterly? Trying to understand what might be the outcome of your last ask, if your last ask was, let's say, in the last 2 weeks,
Yep.
given the circumstances.
So for unemployment insurance claims of formal federal workers multiple times a week,
Okay.
we are drawing down from Treasury multiple times a week to reimburse the claims of
All
those
right.
former federal workers.
And there has been no problem with that drawing down, correct?
To date, we have not had any problem.
All right, okay. In my conversations with the city administrator, I just want to make sure
Yeah, to
that
date, we have not had
we're,
any.
we're, as they say in the community, that we're cool on that, that everything is still percolating.
Yeah, everything, we're cool on that. I'm picking up what you put down and everything is still percolating. But I want to manage your expectations that this situation is fluid,
Yeah,
right? And so, if and when there are changes, we will notify everyone. But we're marching forward business as usual, and but we're not ignoring the tea leaves. We're watching everything.
mhm. So if we get complaints in the office, oh, I filed 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and I haven't gotten what's going on? Haven't gotten my money.
So I think it's really important for everyone to understand that there's and this is a federal law, 21 days to process a claim. And so the claims examiner has 21 days to process that. There's also a waiting week. And so you don't file today and then expect to be paid Friday. Like, that's not how that works. The waiting week is in place. Similar to, like, if you're working a job, you got like 40 hours in the hole before you get paid. It's a very similar concept.
Okay, is the federal government or the U.S. Department of Labor doing any trainings for the states who are anticipating a raise in the claims?
At this point, there are no advertised trainings for states that are impacted.
All right, has the federal government mentioned any upgrades or changes in this whole process of claims?
No, to this point, there is not been any updates about any changes. We are awaiting any guidance that they may have that would impact the situation, or that would inform the situation.
And your guidance would come directly from U.S. Labor or from OMB? Where would you?
Department of Labor.
Department of Labor. Okay. So everyone listening, Department of Labor will be the authority on our claims as opposed to some other source. I just want it real clear to the public what mandates we would be following.
Yeah, but I do recommend that folks visit fedsupport.dc.gov to learn about eligibility criteria to apply for unemployment insurance benefits. And, there are unique situations for every individual. There are federal contractors, and there is a process already in place for those that may have been separated from employment from their contractor because of changes in the federal landscape. And so visiting, fedsupport.dc.gov is what folks should do. And any updates we have, we will provide them there on the site.
All right. I wanted to ask about a specific situation. Let's say someone who was expecting naturally to move on from the administration. And then they discover and they put in the resignation, which would be effective, let's say, the 30th or 28th of February. And now they know about this deferred resignation process where you are paid through September of 2025. And so they decide to change. How would that be handled?
Well, DOES would not handle that because the terms of those agreements are through the U.S. Department of Labor and the federal agency in which they are employed with. And so we are not a party to any agreement on resignation or termination. We just provide assistance for those who seek unemployment insurance benefits.
All right, I really want that really clear so that we're not caught up in this, well, why, I'm just telling you, there are some folk who have made that inquiry. Okay. So wanted to make
Sorry.
sure.
I was trying
Okay.
to turn off my phone here and accidentally dialed 911. Okay, sorry.
Okay,
We
all
don't want them
right.
to show up to to room 123. Let me make sure it's off.
Okay, well, we're on question 68, so maybe that helps a little bit. Oh, my goodness. So
Sorry.
how many staff members are in your first source compliance team? Mr. King?
Yes, we have 14 FTEs.
Okay, 14. And how much has been collected in the way of fines that go into your special fund?
So I know in FY 24, we collected 849,000.
And to date, any collections?
For FY 25,
Mm-hmm.
for FY 25, so far we have 274,000.
Okay. And who is being fined? Not the name of the entity per se, but is this primarily, what percentage are restaurateurs? What percentage are construction companies?
I think my team has that information.
All right.
I do know that these are contractors that have fallen short on their goals for
Right.
either our work percentage. Typically, those are construction contracts, the journey worker area where there's hard to identify DC residents in some of those trades, as well as the skilled labor trades. Not as often we'll see a shortage within the apprenticeship category, and it's just a calculation straight from our law. A certain percentage of the direct and indirect costs will have to be paid as a penalty.
Thank you for that. I noted in the reply to our questions that there was one construction company that seems to hang their hat on being fined rather than to be compliant. I wondered what do we do about that situation? I think I saw like 7, 8, 9, 10 listings of, fines. So is there some way for us to change that behavior?
Let's unpack that a little bit because we have to look at the labor market data and understand the workforce and the number of DC residents and skilled labor. And so if in fact we know for a particular project that, and I want to make sure I understand correctly, but if in fact we know for a particular project that there is not the labor available immediately today, it is not outside the realm of a possibility, nor do I believe you should be penalized by coming forward and saying, I know that the labor isn't available, but we want to complete the project and we want to be transparent about our ability to comply. Paying up front a fine, I'm not sure is a bad thing because those dollars go directly to training DC residents in the skilled trade, so we can build up the supply of skilled trade laborers in the district.
So you're sharing that for FY 24, the 849,000, and the for 25 to date, 274,000, is somehow then utilized towards the training?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you utilize that money?
So one example for FY 25 is that we finally have a partnership, and we're in the final days of, we're getting ready to sign off on a partnership for our elevator maintenance and inspector program. Finally. So now we can pay for DC residents to go into that training program so they can they can learn the skills, and then they'll be able to work on construction projects here in the district. It goes to supporting construction skilled trade training for DC residents. So we have to build the pipeline and build up the number of DC residents that can go into these jobs. And in many regards, it's better to have someone come forward and say, we know we can't comply because the number of DC residents isn't there. Because we know those dollars go directly to training, directly.
All right, and so when you say the dollars go directly to training, I assume in the CFO system, they're held in the account, and you extract those dollars when you have a MOU agreement with some entity that's going to provide this training.
Or a competitive grant award.
Yes,
Mhm,
okay, all right,
correct.
that's, okay. Can I get from you, please, the list of grants by amount and name of the organization or vendor that have been awarded, let's say, since starting with FY 23
Okay.
to date, that will help us understand how this resource is used and better understand the value of the fine process.
Yes, we can provide that.
Thank you so much for that. Okay. So does DOES monitor the contracts that independent agencies are responsible for, such as DC Water now is independent agency. So construction there, would that be monitored through your process, the first source process?
I don't believe DC Water. You could speak to that, Dan.
Yeah, what we look for is the amount of government assistance. So if
Mhm.
they're receiving DC government assistance over 300,000, then it will fall into that category. If it's completely independently funded, it would not fall into first source requirements.
Okay, so a contract that is with DC Water, outside vendor, would that be monitored by first source?
I'm not sure it would be if, oh no, look, see, the police showed up right there. I hope they're not coming in for me because my phone was going off.
No,
Okay,
they
okay.
monitor the halls.
They do,
regularly.
okay, I just want
Yes.
to make sure I didn't create some sort of disturbance here. So I'm not sure in this case DC Water would be, because they are quasi-independent and their revenue comes from ratepayers and other limited products that they might resell or wholesale. So I'm not sure in this case it would be DC Water unless it's some sort of not appropriation, but some sort of direct line item from, the budget that council has approved that meets the threshold for monitoring.
Very interesting. We're going to research that because we think it's important to know. We have a number of independent agencies in our government. And I know that they participate in the requirement to expend a portion of their dollars with small business, our local small business community.
Mhm.
So it just stands to reason that they would also have some requirement for first source. So just,
We'll work together and research
yeah,
that. I'm just not sure about DC Water, given the majority of their funding is from the revenue from ratepayers, but we'll
Yeah.
research that.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Ratepayers and otherwise.
And otherwise.
Yes. Right, I'm curious. We have on our books that in FY 24, you collected almost $1 million in first source fines and penalties, $997,915. And I think the number we recently received was a little less. So is that combined with something?
Yeah, I have no car here. FY 24, 997, 915.
Okay,
And
okay,
the first quarter of FY 25 was 96,669.
okay, thank you. Just want to make sure we got the accurate numbers for our report. Um, So what steps do you take to ensure that tip minimum wage employers are using the correct base wage?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is one group of people that's very vulnerable, those tip workers. The first part of our strategic approach is education and outreach. We try to do a number of webinars throughout the year, partnering with the Office of Attorney General, even the DC Office of Human Rights, to make sure that those vulnerable workers are also getting proper training to their employers for sexual harassment. We also utilize our partnership with the unemployment office so that every time an employer goes and reports their quarterly tax wages, they receive an alert on the website about updates to the minimum wage, as well as the tip minimum wage.
You know, we've heard from restaurant workers that claim that their employer engaged in wage theft. What's our recourse and how do we really calculate that now? Because I'm sure that there are some systems that the employee feels have been missed by the employer and vice versa.
Yeah, we think it's very important to do a certain amount of random investigation as well. A lot of times we find that this group of employees are a little fearful of coming forward to file their own claim. While our claim process is very robust and effective, we're able to give back wages and as well as damages back to those workers very quickly. The random audit process is not as fast. So we may have done in the past a review of quarterly reports submitted into the tip portal. We may have done a site visit to make sure that that employer understood the requirements for tip workers as far as their hiring notice that's required that tells them how much they're going to be paid in wages, whether or not that employer is going to have any type of a tip pool that they'll be utilizing. There should be some type of delineation of the amount of tips received through cash and the amount of tips received through credit cards. So that part of that outreach and education helps with the employer understanding. But our random audit process takes a little bit more time. And if we find that there's a large class of employees that may be similarly affected, a lot of times we'll include the Office of Attorney General. The director mentioned in her testimony, we actually had a referred case for a restaurant within a hotel where they end up paying out over $180,000 to those workers, where any of those workers that would have filed a claim with us individually, we would have been able to close it out within probably 2 to 3 months. That random audit process probably took a little over a year.
Great. So, what is the number of filings from workers and the amount that you received, in FY '24?
We're talking about wage theft filings.
Yes, wage theft filings.
So, and this is not specific to minimum wage. This is all of our types of wage theft claims. We have received in the last 12 months for FY '24, 489 claims. Specific to minimum wage and overtime, there was 42. In the previous year, FY '23, we received less. It was 352 total claims. And 43 were minimum wage overtime. But what we made up the difference was in the number of audits that we initiated. During FY '23, we initiated over 881 audits, specifically from our tip portal for tip workers, to make sure that they were being paid the correct minimum wage and that those employers were submitting their tip reports.
And so from your audit, what were your findings?
Yeah, so in most cases, employees were being paid significantly above the minimum wage. And that's because their tips were added on top of the tip minimum wage portion paid by the workers or by the employer. There was a group of employers that were not consistently paying into or submitting their tip reports. So we had to do follow up with those employers to make sure that we got that information. And then for the workers that were not receiving the proper minimum wage, we also made sure that they received back wages to bring them up to that standard.
All right. And you said that 881 audits, and your findings, significant findings, were that the employees were paid above the minimum wage. Correct?
Yes, in most
All right.
cases.
Okay, I want the public to hear that, because frequently what we hear in the government is that they're not being paid, and that's, so it can, the pendulum can be either end, is what you're really saying, but sounds like with 881 audits that you are standing up to the test in the community, and we're getting the information. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Apprenticeships, you listed the DC Apprenticeship Management System as a capital project in the financial plan. Can you tell us more of what kinds of services are provided in this system?
Sure, I'm gonna let Kenneth answer this one. Kenneth?
Yeah, no problem. Great question, Councilwoman. So with our Apprenticescope system, we wanted to replace a legacy system that we had in our DC apprenticeship management system. We talked about old systems a moment ago with UI, and this was kind of the same vein, right? We needed to modernize what we were doing with our apprenticeship data and be in a position where we can collect more information related to employment outcomes, trends around apprenticeships, where were apprenticeships in high volume versus in lower volume. So we went on a project to sunset our legacy system and introduce the new Apprenticescope model. Part of that capital support focused on making sure that all of our data when we transferred it was accurate and something that the Apprenticescope system could take on. This also included an element of capacity building as well. We had to train staff on how to use the new system. We had to train the apprenticeship community. So we actually went through a very thorough process in terms of demoing the new technology. We assembled a small cluster of apprenticeship sponsors to kind of go in and look at the beta pieces of the Apprenticescope system to see like what worked. Does this make sense from the apprenticeship sponsor side? What enhancements should we take away? What should we put a little bit more into? So that was part of the process as well, to where we're happy to say that we were able to release the new technology and the new apprenticeship system of record at the end of last fiscal year.
Okay, and so is it working well? Are you thinking it's capturing the information that it was intended to capture, or is what's going on?
No, we think it's tremendous technology. I mean, we get the feedback from our employer sponsors, our registered apprenticeship sponsors. I mean, I will say, of course, when you roll out new technologies, there's a little bit some hiccups and some gaps that we identify, but we have an open communication process from our apprenticeship sponsors to get that right to my apprenticeship team so that we can work with the developers to mitigate those issues extremely. But in terms of being able to pull information and tell the story about the impact of our apprenticeship system, we definitely see, how that apprenticescope system compares extremely favorably to what we had in our legacy system, DCAMS. What this does for, my team and what we do around apprenticeship is puts us in better positions to understand, what wards are benefiting from apprenticeship and who aren't. Are there specific employment pathways that see a higher level of success versus the ones that do not, so that we can gather best practices for the things that go well and then figure out how do we support the areas that do not. So it allows us to use data in a more dynamic way to inform future decision-making on where we steer our apprenticeship programs and funding.
And so this system also will, of course, capture data from any and all of the apprentice programs that DOES has, but I assume throughout our government, since you're the repository of the employment services that we provide.
Yeah,
That's what I would hope.
And the regulator.
Yeah, we serve as the SAA, the state apprenticeship agency, and the system would capture apprenticeship information for all registered apprenticeship programs here in the district from
All right.
both the employment sponsor lane as well as the participant data.
All right, so that's all of it.
Yeah.
UDC, OSSI, even those that get independent funding through other parts of the federal government. Would your system also contain, let's say, some of the nonprofits that maybe are doing apprenticeship programs?
If they are registered apprenticeships in the district,
they're
for example, OSSI's, they got approved in the teacher occupation at some point last year. So we provide monitoring and oversight of those programs. Same with programs that are at like DC Water or other community-based organizations, as long as they have gone through the district's apprenticeship registration process through the DC Apprenticeship Council.
So the DC Apprenticeship Council, tell us more about its main function and how it is servicing the industry that is providing opportunities through apprenticeships.
Yep, the DC Apprenticeship Council, as of right now, we meet on a every other month cadence. It is comprised of representatives across various clusters and focus. So we have public members, we have education sector representatives, of course, industry represented, and then also community-based organizations, as well as our director serves on the council. And their primary function is to approve and evaluate new apprenticeship programs. So when an individual employer comes in to register a program, they have to submit a set of standards that this team reviews. They review standards in terms of, what the wage is going to be, how many district residents are going to be employed, the actual thoroughness of the training that an apprentice has to go to. Being people that have been experienced in this work, they understand how apprenticeship programs should be articulated in the best interests of district residents. They also process deregistrations, and also if there's individuals that need to come back and get recertification of an apprenticeship program, so they review those issues as well. So say an individual hasn't employed a district resident in the probationary period of their apprenticeship program, the DC Apprenticeship Council will review those situations to say, to identify if there is an apprenticeship sponsor that needs to be deregistered for not committing to an apprenticeship program. And then holistically, they also work, hand in hand with our team. In that apprenticeship council meeting, we do report to them in terms of like new business and old business, like in terms of like what we're really focused on in terms of initiative, to solicit feedback and input from the apprenticeship council. And often, say we're pursuing grant opportunities as well. We also coordinate with the DC Apprenticeship Council because they often have to supply like letters of support and say that this aligns with the focus of the Apprenticeship Council.
So this very important entity, how is it reflected as a part of the WIC?
WIC is the Workforce Investment Council, and so they are not the SAA
Correct.
or the State Workforce Agency. They're a policy, business-driven board.
And I kind of understand that, but I'm getting a clearer understanding of the importance of the apprenticeship council. And particularly, it just seems that if the WIC is concerned with identifying new opportunities for apprenticeship, it would be very useful if there was representation from the apprenticeship council that is a part of the WIC. I don't know whether you, Madam Director, serve that role, or if there is another individual or so that would need to be a part of that. I mean, if we're going to have bring it together and make sure we're utilizing all of our resources effectively.
I mean, I certainly, as sitting on both the WIC and the Apprenticeship Council, play dual roles and represent the interest of the Apprenticeship Council in addition to the State Workforce Agency at WIC board meetings. So there is representation there. Now, it doesn't mean that a member from the Apprenticeship Council could not be appointed to be on the WIC, the Workforce Investment Council. But as it stands right now, there is not a member that serves both on the WIC and the Apprenticeship Council,
All
other
right.
than me.
Okay, we'll work on that. Okay. You listed that there are 173 apprenticeship agreements that were canceled or terminated by employers or sponsors in FY '24. What are the typical circumstances for this?
Yeah, apprenticeship agreement cancellation. Two things primarily come to mind in those situations. One being an employer that um, has not fully registered the apprenticeship into this formal role, meaning that, you know, the apprentice stopped somewhere within the program, they got terminated, or they found other employment within the apprenticeship opportunity. So that can often lead to a cancellation within programs. And also if sometimes in the previous system, we would see duplicate enrollments into the system, you know, so sometimes a person would start an application, and that's some of the capacity building training that we've done with apprenticeship sponsor providers, and they might kick two registrations into the system. One may move forward while the other has to be canceled. So those two are our top reasons: termination, cancellation of the program, and then an erroneous entry into a duplicate entry, I should say.
All right, so how many current apprenticeship agreements do we have in force?
In terms of apprenticeship agreements, we have 6,377 registered apprentices. That covers the span of apprentices everywhere. In terms of district residence specific agreements, that's 874, and that's across 318 total apprenticeship sponsors at this time.
So 318 sponsors,
Correct.
874 that are specific to DC government.
District residing apprentices.
Okay.
Yeah.
DC reside.
Yeah.
Okay. But you have 6,377 that are eligible for review through the apprenticeship council.
No, 6,377 registered apprentices in total. So that can include residents that are from Maryland or Virginia.
Oh, individuals.
Correct.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Yes.
misunderstood.
Mhm.
And these, as you say, can be from Maryland, Virginia, DC, West Virginia, Ohio.
Correct.
Okay. But they're enrolled in a apprenticeship program.
Correct. And
And-
enrollment is through the aforementioned apprenticeship agreement that you were speaking
Okay,
to.
and so there are 318 of those.
there are 318 sponsors that
Okay.
staff those 6,377 positions. How they become a registered apprentice with us is through the apprenticeship agreement.
And so how many agreements do you have then?
It would be the equal number to the registered apprentices, 6,377.
So agreements translate to arrangement for the individual
Yeah,
as
that tells,
opposed to
correct.
a program
Yes.
that,
Mhm.
okay, so how many I'm using the wrong terminology.
Got it.
I
It's
apologize.
yeah.
So how many programs do we have?
And we execute that through what we call the apprenticeship standards. And total sponsors that with active programs is that 318 number.
Okay, so
Yes.
sponsors are the number.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
getting there.
Got it. Got it.
I'll be better next time.
That's why we're here.
Yes, no, I wanted to make sure that we understand the terminology. That's very important.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to say with that, we are complete in our questions. But I must ask if there's anything you would like to add to the, record today, Madam Director.
Yeah, so I'd like to thank the committee and your office for working with us. I appreciate the legislation that you advanced that is going to support us for the background checks for the Summer Youth
Yes.
Employment Program. So thank you so much for taking that on and helping us there. I'd also like to thank my two first timers here who did a great job elaborating and expounding on the programs that they oversee. And I always want to take the opportunity to thank the staff at the DC Department of Employment Services that are economic first responders and have a really difficult job of serving and assisting people. So I appreciate the opportunity to report, and I look forward to updating you and briefing you as we get more information about this unemployment federal situation.
Well, thank you very much. And just please keep me informed because you can see that everyone is very curious and they want to make sure, well, they just want to be in the know if nothing else. And it's such an important time for our government. And to Mr. Washington, who is joining you today, I want you to know you get to, he was here very, very early.
Yes.
And so he's already put in a whole day.
A big thank you to Jason and the folks behind me.
Yes,
And there's
yes.
probably about 20 people in a conference room that make all of this happen.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
thank you to
Well,
everybody.
thank you to you and your team, sincerely. And you got a special task and you have special place in all of our hearts because we know it is not easy under the circumstances. So thank you.
Thank you.
Again. So I want to thank everyone who participated in today's performance oversight hearing for their contributions. We learned a great deal, and I hope those who watched have a better understanding of the work of these important agencies and what has transpired during the past year. If the public has any additional thoughts or would like to submit written testimony regarding the performance of these agencies, please email it to seal@dccouncil.gov. That's CEAL@dccouncil.gov. The hearing record will close in 10 business days from today on March 11th at 5 p.m. The committee's next performance oversight hearing will be on Thursday, February 27th, 2023. Again, we will begin at 9:30 a.m. and we will be talking with the Department on Aging and Community Living and the Commission on Aging. With that, this concludes today's hearing. The time is now 1:30. Looks like it's 1:32 p.m. Same day we started on the 25th of February 2025. And